G'day battlers and welcome to the Clash of the Casters, where we finally decide and find out once and for all who is the greatest Pokemon GO caster of all time. I'm PvP Steve, and today we're going to be seeing everyone from the 2025 Play Pokemon series who casted at a tournament throughout 2025, competing in an Open Great League tournament, same format as the World Championships coming up in just a little bit over a month now. It's getting pretty close. Many of these casters are going to be casting the tournament. Many of them are even going to be competing in the World Championships. And so this is sort of a great chance to get another bit of a look at the meta, get a vibe of what is going on after the North American International Championships and PJCS to really get a feel for what is going on in this meta. And so it is going to be a really fun tournament. But there's a problem, chat, because if every one of the Play Pokemon casters is currently playing in this tournament, who is left to cast this tournament? I mean, like, I can't do it. I'm playing in this tournament. And so I thought there was only one place to go. If everyone casting is going to be battling, then maybe we should lean into the battlers to get into the casting. And so today we are going to be joined by 3 world champions to join the cast here today. And so that is exactly what we're going to do. Welcome in to the Clash of the Casters. It's Axon, it's DancingRob, and it is MEweedle, the triple world champion sweep. Know your Kai, because it is 2 a.m. in his time. But the ones that is at a reasonable hour, welcome in, champions. How are we feeling today? Axon, how are you?
That is going.
You know what? I forgot to unmute. So, Axon, I'm going to ask you one more time.
All right. I'm very excited. I love watching all these casters. They're some of the best battlers in the world, and we don't get to see them too often. They are normally behind the desk doing the casting themselves. So being able to see their read on the meta and seeing where the meta has gone after NAIC and after the Japanese qualifiers, it's going to be very cool.
Yeah, you know, even some of these guys were casting at NAIC, so they really had that full view of everything going on at the tournament. So it's going to be really fun to see what their take is. Rob, how about you getting into the Clash of the Casters, second year running? Going to be some really fun battles today, I'm sure.
I'm sure about that. I'm especially curious to know which region has the best casters, whether it is Europe, whether it is the Americas, or whether it is actually APAC.
Yeah, look, I mean, you know, Oceania is coming out in force this year. I think we've got the biggest field that we've ever had yet. We're going to have 6 casters. I think Europe has 8, and then North America and Latin America each fielding 9 casters in this particular tournament. So there's a full 32 that are actually going to be competing in this tournament. So it's getting pretty big, but that does mean, Rob, that someone is going to have like 32 players. I don't know if you know this. It is the perfect number for a 5-round Swiss tournament, which means that someone is going to have to go a clean 5-0 to win this tournament and claim not only the title of the greatest caster of all time, but also a 100 USD prize as well, which is not too shabby. And, you know, it's a good incentive to get the casters in on the tournament. But Weedle, how are we feeling for the Clash of the Casters 2025?
I'm very excited as well. I mean, I think Rob and Axon have both, basically said everything there is. But I'm looking forward to seeing the different variety of casters, featuring as many as we can and having a look at all of their different choices in Pokemon and playstyles.
Yeah, 100%. And we are going to see a lot of variety today, I'm certain. Although also you're going to see a few familiar teams as well. Let's take a little bit of a look at the battles that we're going to be seeing in this week 1 stream, because this is a 2-part stream. First of all, today we are going to be watching a little bit of a variety of casters. So you can see here we've picked 14 different matches, 14 different caster v caster action figure matchups, where we're going to be seeing some of the best casters in the world face off on the battlefield. You can see this is the order that we're going to be playing them as well. We're going to be watching CalebPeng versus TomahawkUK battle for the 2nd place to start off the stream, followed by FishOnAHeater from North America, from Oceania, my apologies, LNDsGabzis from LNDs, from LATAM. Of course, we've got AlphaFeeb versus Adelian in number 3, CountXevious versus Omar CHM10 in number 4, debbiepebble versus LouThePikachu in number 5, ArelHydae versus JogadaEX number 6, number 7, FIE versus Fishy Legs 2 from Oceania. Number 8 is Steps 1516 from LATAM versus House Dark 93 from North America. We've got number 9, LNDsAureo taking on Thaliwi, a LATAM battle. We've got number 10, Tuo Butters versus... I'm not actually sure who this guy is, to be completely honest with you. Hopefully we'll find out later in the stream. Maybe his name's going to be on stream or something. Number 11, we have an oceanic clash with DrTrotter versus Stumpy, 25-17, as he loves to be called. Number 12, we have Ice Chris from LATAM versus the one and only ArceusAurelius. Certainly one of the favorites in this tournament for sure. Number 13, we have Speediest Chief coming in against Rocha Babyface, who, by the way, won last year's Clash of the Casters, so is definitely going to be a face to look out for. And the final battle of the stream is going to be a pretty hype matchup between NiteTimeClasher versus sophtoph. A bit of a North American clash as well. I mean, guys, what matchup in particular are you guys really looking forward to? I'll start with you, Weedle. We'll go backwards.
I mean, I'm already looking forward to that first match, to be honest. You know, Fareed is a good friend of mine, and we have Caleb, who's a very strong competitor, both being second place very often in the Play Pokemon series, which I can relate to in terms of GBL at least. But, you know, as you said, that final match is looking very strong too. Two top performers, especially sophtoph in GBL. Her performance, I believe she reached number 1 on the leaderboard just last season as well. So I'm looking forward to see her battle as well.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Rob? Have you got any favorite matchup that you're keen to see?
I'm curious to see especially those that we don't see as often on regional streams as well battling. For example, 2 girls facing with debbiepebble versus LouThePikachu as our 5th match.
Yeah, those are 2 battlers that I don't think we've seen compete in a very long time. I mean, Debbie used to compete before Oceania had streams, but Lou, I don't think has actually jumped in from the Go side yet. So it will be a very cool matchup to see. But what about you, Axon? Any matchup you're especially excited for?
Yeah, I'd have to say matchup number 13, Speediest Chief versus Rocha Babyface. Obviously, you did say Rocha won it last year, but I think what interests me the most is Speedy actually competed at NAIC this year. He's been trying so hard to get back into the Show 6 scene, so that is going to be a clash of the casters that we really want to see. I think those 2 battlers are some of the best in the world, and it's at the end of the day, so stay tuned, chat, if you want to see one of the most interesting matches of the tournament. That's the one that I'm looking forward to the most.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a very special matchup. And as Henry in the chat, because you might realize that he's not actually here. Hypothetically, some of us may have forgotten to register in time, which is very true for some of these casters as well. So if you don't see a face here, one of 2 things has happened. Number 1, they forgot to register, or number 2, they just didn't upload their battles, which we are going to see today a lot of people that did not upload their battles. And don't take that as thinking that they didn't win. It just means that the casters are not very good at uploading their battles on time. I mean, some of these rounds finished just 2 days ago. So these battles they're currently, round 4 has currently begun. So today we are going to be watching these sort of selection of battles from the first 3 rounds. And then next week we'll see sort of the top performers in round 4 and round 5. But with that said, we've got a lot of battles to get to. And so I think we're going to get underway, starting off with that battle of the second place. And I guess MEweedle is going to be coming in second place again, because he won't be casting till second. But we've got Axon and Rob are going to be coming in to take this battle away. So gents, you're not going to see me for a while. But with that said, let's get into the battles. Really excited to see how this all goes.
All right, I'm very excited for this first match, Rob. How about you?
Oh, me too. It is especially cool because we have a European and a North American caster, and a North American and a European battler. So who are you rooting for? I couldn't have
said it better myself here. I feel like Tomahawk is a player who always brings the spice at these tournaments, and Caleb, he always does bring a hard meta team, but he has that kind of a bulky pick on there. This time, it's kind of funny. He's using the team that I ran at NAIC. I watched over his casting of the tournament. Early on in that tournament, he kept on saying, Araquanid, why did Axon bring this? He's using 5 Pokemon at this event, and here he is. He has been converted into the Araquanid Colt, so I'm going to be excited to see how he's going to play out with that thing.
I totally agree, especially because Tomahawk's team is so spicy. Like, there's some very unique picks that we haven't even seen in the last few months, so I'm very curious to see how that works out.
Yeah, I would assume this is going to be running the new moveset on Komodo with the Clanging Scales Community Day move. I'm kind of interested because I see that Dedenne on CalebPeng's side, and then I see like 4 Pokemon weak to that on Tomahawk's side. Now, I don't know the moveset specifically on this Komodo, but it can run Poison Jab, which would maybe give it a bit more play into Dedenne. I would be kind of surprised to see that, but also it does have a bit better pacing. It's still a good fast and pressure move. And if you don't have that, then you really have to rely on your Runerigus as your only Dedenne counter.
I definitely agree. It will be exciting to see, and I'm happy to start any second from now to see some exciting matchups. And especially whether... Oh yeah, so that is a good lead for Tomahawk so far. So we see an immediate switch into Drapion, which is a good safe swap, even after so many months of Drapion action that we're able to witness.
Yeah, I know we had the Crunch nerf here in this season, but I mean, Crunch getting the debuff, that was just the cherry on top. This Pokemon is still so spammy and has great coverage as well. And I mean, we see, since this Drapion is chipping down the Lapras, it might open up that Diggersby just a little bit more in the back line. I'm going to be interested to see how that Runerigus in the back is going to have any sort of play. It's going to be a very spicy pick here, and we see the attempt at a catch here on the Moltres, but an Aqua Tail being thrown instead.
That is some good anticipation to wait for that, but even Galarian Moltres doesn't care too much about the Shadow Drapion. You can tank 2 Aqua Tails quite easily, and having Fly is actually not that bad, because it should also knock out pretty soon. But we see Caleb swapping back into the Diggersby. And the
so at this point, Moltres... Yeah, it's not very healthy anymore. It should be able to land this Brave Bird, but after landing this move, if you can't swap, you're going to get farmed down. We see the shield by the Diggersby, a fantastic play. You are down 2 shields to 0, but you have a lot of energy and a lot of HP across the board.
Especially because you should be still able to tank 1 move from Lapras. This is going to be interesting. And a no shield from the bait from Tomahawk. This is crazy.
Wow, what a call there. I'm surprised by the Fire Punch, but I'm more surprised by that bait call. The Lapras has so much energy. I don't think an Ice Beam or a Sparkling Aria would have quite knocked out. So at this point, Tomahawk, he realizes, go for the Ice Beam. You're not going to get to a second move. This does just a little bit more raw damage. And the Diggersby, once it takes this attack, is going to be low enough that that Rune in the backline might be able to finish this off. And there is a Dusclops in the backline, which has a lot of super effective Ghost-type damage. But you have Brutal Swing, one of the spammiest moves in the game.
Especially smart play by Tomahawk, knowing that if the Drapion from CalebPeng is out from the field, there's probably nothing that is going to stop the Runerigus up 2 shields. We're going to see how close Caleb can still make that match, though.
A second Brutal Swing being reached before even a Shadow Punch is going to be launched. Is this enough? It knocks out the Dusclops. There are still 2 shields remaining for Tomahawk now. While the 2 Pokemon in the backline are conventionally counters to this pick, I have to imagine up 2 shields and up this energy, it's not going to have that bad of a time taking down both these Pokemon.
I definitely agree. Some solid plays from both sides. And as we're about to finish our first battle,
the Aqua Tail bait comes through. Honestly, I don't think Aqua Tail would have been quite enough to knock out, but at this point, I don't think it really matters. Great counting by Tomahawk. This is just a Fire Punch. It's going to do so much less than an Aqua Tail or a Crunch would do. You survive that move pretty easily, and you have, at this point, nearly a Brutal Swing plus a Rock Tomb. I was not expecting this Pokemon to be a pick we'd see at this tournament, but somehow, Runerigus coming through here with the endgame sweep knocks out that Diggersby, knocks out the Shadow Drapion, and it looks like Tomahawk takes game number 1.
Very impressive gameplay, which makes me curious how Caleb is going to adapt to that Runerigus pressure, seeing how his strat didn't work in the first game against Runerigus.
Yeah, can we just talk about that team that Tomahawk brought for just a second there? He led Lapras with a Galarian Moltres in the backline. I'm a little bit surprised Caleb did not lean into Dedenne at all, but because he didn't, Tomahawk was not punished for that ABA weakness. And I mean, I didn't know if Rune would have a lot of play in the backline, saying Dedenne wasn't there, but it did prove me wrong. It's a Pokemon that if you're up shields, you can put in some work even in some of those bad matchups.
That might also just be a strat by Tomahawk now, thinking that the Dedenne is going to come for sure, and maybe hard countering that with maybe a Poison Jab Como plus Runerigus line. That gives the Dedenne just 0 play in the second game.
I do want to shout this out. I got information on the moveset that Tomahawk is running. He is, in fact, on Poison Jab on that Komodo, which might actually be scaring off that Dedenne just a little bit. I gotta say, you know, I expect spice from Tomahawk. I don't think I'm surprised in the slightest that he's on that Poison Jab moveset. I actually lost to it in GBL when it first came out, so it makes sense, and I'm excited to see if it comes here in game number 2.
I can't wait to see that. And game 2 starts off with Lapras into Dusclops, a fairly neutral matchup in the lead, which gives us a lot to watch out for the backline. And we actually see the Dedenne coming from CalebPeng here.
A good call by Caleb to bring that Dedenne, but he did not bring it in the right position here. The worst thing about this matchup for Dusclops is Psywave does 2 damage per turn. You can see how much it's already done with the fast food pressure to this Dusclops. In comes the first Shadow Punch. I think at this point you almost have back-to-back on this Dusclops, but it's just so bad in this scenario. We do see that swap out into the Shadow Drapion, met by the Shadow Caesar to try to wall off the fast food pressure, likely get a 2 shield farm down against this Poison-type Pokemon.
I do like the fairly quick counter swap by Tomahawk, and even the no shield. That is a great call. Because a crunch for sure would have been very, very close to knocking out, if not knocking it out.
Yeah, by calling that Aquatail bait, is there a chance you don't even have to shield twice? It looks like the bullet punches are going to get the full farm now, nearly 100 energy on a Shadow Caesar, and you have nowhere to tank this. There's a Dedenne in the back line, and you have a Dusclops that doesn't want to take these Night Slashes. You're already at 1, you're at the 2nd as well. I don't know where Caleb's going to be able to have any sort of play in this game.
I feel like at this point he's hoping for an ABA to Dedenne again, hoping for maybe the Galarian Moltres in the back. But he's for sure not going to like the Runerigas that his Dedenne will see pretty soon.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, that Lapras is still around. I don't think Lapras is even going to be necessary anymore in this game because its Dusclops is so low. And we can see the boost, of course we do. I swear that is not a 1 in 8 chance. I have a little bit of trauma involving this Pokemon. But this is going to definitely knock out this Pokemon. And luckily, the Caesar is low on HP, so the boost not as impactful as it could have been here. But in the backline, this is not what the little mouse wants to see.
Poor Dedenne for sure. I mean, technically, they're somewhat neutral against each other with the charge move, but the pacing is just so bad from Dedenne with only being able to throw the play rift. So that looks like a rough game for Caleb at this point.
Yeah, Dedenne's bread and butter here is going to be Parabolic Charge. Any matchup you're going to be forced not to throw that is a bad matchup. And as you can see, that Rock Tomb coming through, Brutal Swing can likely be thrown to get the KO against this little mouse. And even if it doesn't, there are still, I believe, 2 Pokemon on Tomahawk's side that can knock out this thing later on. So yeah, Brutal Swing comes through, knocks out the Dedenne. And we see a 2-0 victory for the European caster, TomahawkUK.
With some very impressive calls overall, not only the way how he called the opposing lineups and how he was navigating his own Pokemon, but also how good he was with calling baits and nukes during the whole games.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. There was the Fire Punch call that he made on that Lapras from the Diggersby that honestly, if the Scorching Sands would have landed, there's a chance that Lapras might have been knocked out. But Tomahawk, he made the line reads. He went ABA to Dedenne when he figured Dedenne wouldn't be in the lead. And then he had that hard counter for Dedenne in the backline when he figured Caleb would want to bring that Pokemon there into game number 2. So great reads by Tomahawk. Caleb played well, but I think this team was just a little bit too crazy to like truly have a good game plan going into it by Tomahawk. And I think that's part of what makes Tomahawk's team so scary. They have a lot of weird picks on him, and he is so good at piloting them.
I totally agree. At least Caleb is going to live up to his reputation and finish his 2nd place for this matchup as well.
Yeah, there we go.
I'm sorry,
pretty
Caleb.
excited to see.
I love you.
I'm excited to see how these 2 battlers do in the rest of this tournament here. I believe Steve said you have to go 5-0 to be able to make it to the end of this event. So Caleb, you know, he might not be able to win it all, but he might still make a deep run. So I'll be excited to see if we see any more battles from him in this event.
Likewise. And just as our first match finishes, I'm pretty sure I'm going to hand it over to my friend Weedle for the 2nd game together with you.
Welcome on in, Weedle. How did you feel about that first game?
I mean, I'm happy that Reed won, but I enjoyed the Runerigas gameplay in general there. I didn't expect it to be that good with double resisted Shadow Claws against the Diggersby, and you know the Drapion having crunch and stuff against it. So yeah, I think he played well around with the Runerigus energy there, and I'm excited to see whether it gets used by any other casters here in the next few games.
I'd honestly be shocked if we see another one here today, unless we see Tomahawk back on stream at some point. But a very cool pick by him, and we see some interesting teams here as well for our next match. I think the most interesting pick for me is going to be that Alolan Sandslash. It's a Pokemon that in previous metas has been pretty strong, but I think in the new season we haven't seen too many people run this pick. It can be a little bit RPS, but a lot of people are disrespecting Ice-type right now, so it might have some play.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially with the Gligar being brought as well, although that Gligar is on the same side as the Alolan Sandslash. It is indeed a Shadow Claw Alolan Sandslash, which does make that Diggersby matchup slightly worse, as you do not have the super effective fast move pressure of Powder Snow. But on the flip side, it makes that Scizor and Dusclops matchup just slightly better.
Yeah, and we also see a Shadow Quagsire, which is generally pretty good into the Alolan Sandslash. Honestly, Shadow Quagsire looks like it has a lot of neutral play across the whole team. I feel like Quagsire isn't the best into Cradilly, but because now these Cradillys are running Acid instead of that Bullet Seed Fast Move pressure, it has a bit more play there. And Greninja on FishOnAHeater side is probably one of the more consistent answers, saying that you resist Aqua Tail. But if you're a Shadow Quagsire, you're up a Shield or up any sort of energy, there's a chance you have play into the entire team of FishOnAHeater side.
Yeah, that Greninja is looking very strong, and is probably even going to force Gabzis to bring that Dedenne just to counter the Greninja. So FishOnAHeater might be looking to, catch the Dedenne onto either a Gligar or a Cradilly, knowing that Gabzis almost is forced to bring it against that Greninja.
Yeah, it's a good call. Let's see what happens here in game number 1. First lead is not what you want to see as the Shadow Drapion. You're going to get completely farmed down in the 2-shield matchup, but let's see how both players are going to play it out. I know going for a crunch is generally going to be a good play here, but we see an Aqua Tail bait, but a move thrown by the Annihilate.
Yeah, probably just trying to avoid getting counted down before getting to enough moves and minimize the energy. It looks like there was a bit of something going on there with the CMP tie not triggering, but it's not going to be able to fire off the first Aqua Tail bait.
In comes that first Aqua Tail, a call by the Annihilate here. That is actually kind of devastating. If you land the crunch, the Annihilate is very low on HP, but that no-shield now puts us into an awkward range where it's going to be hard to farm down, especially after these boosts. We take a look at in the back line, we see that Shadow Scizor, which will take a lot of fast move pressure in return, as well as a Rage Fist to draw that second shield.
And now I almost fear that just a Greninja is about to come in and completely sweep when it's upper shield, as it is at the moment.
Yeah, I'd imagine that's going to be
what FishOnAHeater brings in.
It's got to be in the back line, right? That Pokemon is so good. In comes that Greninja, as Weedle so expertly was able to call out. We see a Night Slash thrown on alignment, giving a full Water Shuriken through to the Greninja. If this wasn't already bad, it's just getting worse by the moment.
Maybe a boost can somehow save it, but the boost doesn't come through. Is she just going to fire the Night Slash on CMP? Ooh, that's valuable chip damage, I think, for Gabzis. Maybe gets it in the range of a Mud Shot down later for that Quagsire.
Exactly, yeah, you got the shield with the Night Slash bait earlier on. If you would have boosted with that Night Slash in the first one that you threw, there's a chance this Greninja would have been in a much more comfortable farm down range. But right now, you can come in with your Shadow Quagsire, potentially make a catch at some point too, and then maybe fully farm this down without taking a charge attack. Depending on what's in the back, that could be good, but if it's still that Cradilly, that could be a little bit awkward. There's a lot of play still left in this game. It depends on a catch, and no, we see the instant Hydro Cannon, which likely will take out a good 60-70% of this Shadow Quagsire's HP.
Yeah, that does a lot of damage, and I think at this range, even that Alolan Sandslash is probably going to be able to win CMP and take it out. However, there is still that remaining opportunity of an Ice Punch catch onto the Drapion.
Yeah, not having Mud Bomb here kind of hurts in this matchup, but once again, the instant throw, it could have been a way to turn. If we saw the other trainer's side, then we would have known for sure, but Ice Punch will connect to the Shadow Quagsire, knocking it out, and Shadow Claws, despite being resisted, will easily be enough here to whittle down this Shadow Drapion, taking the win for FishOnAHeater.
Yeah, very well played by FishOnAHeater, just using that Greninja basically perfectly, getting, a Hydro Cannon off against the final Shadow Quagsire after beating that Scizor. Interesting call from Gabzis not to bring the Dedenne, despite how strong the Greninja was, even especially since it was indeed a Shadow Annihilate lead, so kind of semi-ABA weak into that Dedenne as well.
Yeah, not only that, but I mean, say we did see a Dedenne lead there. He had a Lowland Sandslash as his best answer to it. I don't know exactly how he would have dealt with that in the lead, but luckily he was able to make that right team read once again. Dedenne can be an annoying Pokemon, but if it's not brought, then it's not doing anything. So let's see if that adjustment here in game number 2 is going to happen. Dedenne, a very strong Pokemon, as long as it avoids those bad matchups, and here it is.
There it is, the Dedenne led into the Greninja, and it's an Annihilate that comes in. So this is looking very good for the Dedenne right off the bat.
Yeah, not throwing the player off, going straight for the parabolic charge. This move is so spammy, it raises your defense, and it lands against the Shadow Annihilate. We swap to Shadow Seizor to save that electric type for that Greninja in the back line. And we no shield or Radius. This will do quite a bit of damage.
It's going to no shield, and it is going to do a lot of damage, but it's probably just not trying to avoid shield up Greninja at all costs, right? So maybe expected that to do just slightly less to be able to still reach the Trailblaze, as this Greninja will get a nice farm down here, and the Hydro Cannon still do so much against Dedenne.
Yeah, they didn't want to shield, because if you shield, you go down energy and shields it into a Greninja, that's bad, but you're still down energy here. Great counting by Heater. He knows at this point that was not a Trailblaze, and even though Dedenne on paper is good into Water-type Pokemon, we have to keep in mind Hydro Cannon is an insane move. You've taken some fast move pressure chip as well. This Hydro Cannon might come close to knocking out. We likely see a shield here, unless at this point you're confident in the Shadow Quagsire in the back.
And it could also, even from here on, be the Credilli. No, it's not. It's the Alolan Sandslash again. But despite being here up against a ground type, it is up a shield. So FishOnAHeater might be able to sweep with the Sandslash instead of the Greninja this time.
Being the non-Shadow Sandslash, you don't quite get the 2-shot in the Zero Shield matchup, but just investing a single shield, getting a bit more Shadow Claw damage in, and going for those 2 Ice Punches should still be enough to knock this out. Do we see a shield on this attack? At this point, once again, a no shield, just relying on that Greninja potentially to close out this game. Ice Punch once again coming in, not a shield by the Shadow Quagsire. Are we able to survive this move? It's going to be close.
Smartly goes for the drill run there to get slight more damage to actually take it out in the Zero Shields. That's a very good play once again by FishOnAHeater. But back comes in the Dedenne, and it's just going to go straight for the Parabolic Charge and boost up its defense. It is shielded by FishOnAHeater.
At this point, you need to be very precise as the Dedenne. You need energy for the Greninja. You need energy for the Quagsire, or the Alolan Sandslash rather, in the backline. It's going to be tricky. We shield up against the Greninja. Can we ever farm down and double Parabolic Charge? I think that might be an idea, but a Night Slash bait comes through. That could be bad.
But does get the full farm down. Now it just comes down to, does the Sandslash have a move?
At this point, if it has an Ice Punch, is that even enough to knock out? We're at +2 defense. There is a chance Dedenne could survive that. In comes the charge attack. What's it going to be? Is this a drill run?
I do not know. I have lost count myself. And it is a drill run. And it is enough to take out even the double defense boosted Dedenne. And that is a good game by FishOnAHeater as he takes the set 2-0.
Yeah, 2-0 victory. Honestly, very close battles there. That Dedenne was proving to be a very tricky Pokemon for him in that game number 2, but he danced around it. He knew Greninja. Sure, it's not a great matchup there, but you outpaced those Hydro Cannons. So any bit of energy lead, making it so Dedenne always has to swap out as well, is one of the best ways to deal with that Pokemon. If you don't let it stay in and ramp up its defense stat, even in good matchups, it can be kind of awkward to use.
Yeah, that Annihilate save swap just even put so much pressure on the Dedenne, right? Because Gabzis knew she needed the Dedenne for that Greninja. So kind of the Annihilate save swap forced her almost to swap out and keep the Dedenne alive, but that kind of cost her a whole Scizor instead.
Yeah, and that Shadow Quagsire, we said that it did have a lot of neutral play into the team, and it kept aligning into the Alolan Sandslash, a Pokemon that, on paper, you should be good against, but the expert play of always keeping a shield advantage for FishOnAHeater, as well as always having a lot of energy in the bank, made it so even that good matchup made it so Shadow Quagsire was very much dealt with. And I think overall, very good team reads by FishOnAHeater, and very well executed there, especially in Game 2, coming back from such a terrible lead.
Yeah, so here, the match does go to Oceania against the Latam player. I'm excited to see what FishOnAHeater does later in the next rounds, whether he makes it all the way. We'll find out next week, I guess. But yeah. I think you will be swapping out now, I believe.
Yeah, send this over to DancingRob for the next match.
Hello,
Yo.
I am back. So now we have 2 European casters casting the next action. We have a North American battle, AlphaFeeb, very known caster, versus Edelion, one of our fellow European friends, who is also a community ambassador for the game, which is pretty cool.
So what I am noticing immediately is that Jellicent. What do you think of Jellicent in this current meta?
It is good against certain picks like Lapras that Phoebe didn't bring. It is good against the Blastoise for sure. Just to have a wall is something that can soak all the energy. Against this particular team, I would be afraid to bring it just because of the dominance of the Shadow Drapion, which, to be honest, looks pretty good into Adelion's team just in general.
Yeah, that Drapion has energy that can go everywhere, like even the Diggersby, obviously, and the other ground type being Gligar, also weak to Aqua Tails, and just paces to the digs almost too slowly to consistently manage the Shadow Drapion. So Phoebe potentially is just going to look to safe swap that Drapion every game.
I definitely agree. The picks that we used to see in previous months as well, especially from AlphaFeeb. Blastoise has not been too popular at the beginning of the season, but has seen a rise since the middle of the season, and it has won its first regional as well this season, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Phoebe is even running the same team that he successfully ran at NEIC all the way up to 9th place. So he's probably feeling very confident in his plays with this team. And I guess we'll find out how he does against Edelion, who I believe is not as involved in terms of battling in the Play Pokemon circuit, but he is a strong battler to look out for.
I'm curious to see our first game and what the trainers will bring. So we do see the Jumpluff lead by Phoebe into Didena? No, I don't think that's the right battle, but I'm sure we'll see the right battle in any second.
Don't worry, Steve, it's okay.
Yeah, here we are. We do see the Jumpluff lead into the Didena.
And it is an energy ball Jumpluff, so it does have that neutral move into the Dedenne rather than straight up resisted moves that the acrobatics version would have in this scenario.
Which definitely helps. I'm not too familiar with that matchup in particular, but I can imagine as more shields are invested from the Dedenne side, the better that matchup gets. Despite the energy ball.
Thundershocks add up and slowly get it into range of another parabolic charge, but I imagine this won't do enough in the Zero Shield. So Phoebe might be looking to just play out those Zero Shields, as that is the best version of this matchup for him.
I definitely like that play, considering you might want just an energy or shield advantage for the Drapion in the back that we already talked about might be very good into Adelion's team. It looks like Edelion is not going to shield and just barely win the Zero Shield here in the lead.
Phoebe is just going to let it go. He realizes that Drapion is so good with some energy, he doesn't really need to switch for it, right? He's just going to look to try and generally put lots of pressure on the whole of Adelion's team. But in does come that Diggersby, which is probably one of Adelion's better answers to this Drapion. But it is down just a tiny bit of energy. So we'll have to see whether Edelion is going to look to make any baits.
Yeah, this matchup is really interesting. Diggersby can easily tank 2 Aqua Tails in this matchup, but not the third one. And we do see a bait successful by Edelion, which definitely makes that matchup better, considering the 1 Poison Sting advantage that the Drapion had.
So Edelion, he might be able to just go straight for Scorching Sands from here on. Was Phoebe trying to make a catch? I don't know, but Edelion is going to throw this Scorching Sands into this Dusclops anyway. We'll have to see what he's decided to run in the back.
At this point, this is interesting because you definitely need them. Oh, that helps a lot. I don't think you needed the Scorching Sand damage for this particular matchup, but for sure would have been nice to get the Scorching Sands debuff in any case.
Yeah, that debuff just really makes sure that the ice punches are not doing as much as they could be. I don't even think the next one after this will quite KO, although it might actually after just a little bit more hex damage.
Let's
Feeb
see
is actually
how
going to go for the Shadow Punch.
this is interesting. This for sure doesn't kill, but this could put the pressure on. But Adelian counts very well, knows that this couldn't be the thing. And now he has to decide whether he would rely at all on the Digger Spear if he tries to save the energy on the Drapion. I'm
Maybe
not
Feeb
sure
just threw
whether I
the
like
Shadow
that.
Punch.
Especially
Maybe
because the
Feeb just threw the Shadow
Aqua
Punch to get out as quickly as he could into his own Drapion. But Delian is actually going to throw some more of his energy into this. His Pokemon are getting very low, but just the Hex damage is not going to do anything to that Diggersby.
Yeah. Especially the Shadow Dust Club is close to Scorching Sand range, which definitely helps. We do so a bait again, but at this point the Diggersby is quite low. We do see the no-shield.
Adelian calls it again. He's just calling all of Feeb's baits, and at the moment, is Feeb going to shield the Scorching Sands? No, he lets it go. He does survive this, but he's deep in the red. But it is only quick attacks and poison stings for Adelian at this point.
This is so close. We might even see a shield KO. Probably not through the Dust Clubs at this point yet, but we'll see. Oh, we do have two moves from Adelian.
He had a move.
Bad.
Yeah, well played by Adelian there, just making sure that he uses his shields in all the right places and is managing his energy perfectly to take out Feeb's Dust Clubs there at the end.
That was quite impressive, and even both of us didn't know till the very end who's gonna win that game. That's how close it was and how exciting it was to actually watch. I hope that this is the action we're going to see all over again. Looks like we're starting with the second battle soon.
Adelian might be looking to maybe just slightly adjust to make sure that he doesn't need a debuff to make that game just as close as it was, right? I'm not sure how it would have turned out without that Scorching Sands debuff onto the Dust Clubs, but I think it would have maybe even flipped into Feeb's favor.
I'm especially curious to see whether we see any adjustments at this point. We were kind of seeing the picks that we were expecting, and it looks like we do have a jump left lead into again, this time into the Diggersby.
And this time it's Adelian that's using that Drapion.
Yeah.
And because it's not an acrobatics jump off, it doesn't really have that hard-hitting move against the Drapion. He tries going for a catch, but he just doesn't get it.
Luckily, Drapion might be able to just take two Aqua Tails, especially in the zero shield scenarios. So I'm curious to see how the battlers are going to play that out. Adelian should be in Aqua Tails roughly right now.
Yeah, we'll have to see if Adelian is actually going to try to go switch, because he does have that Primeape in the back, which is not much better into that Jumpluff than the Diggersby is.
The Primeape does have Ice Punch at least for the for the Jumpluff, which definitely helps. It does not quite knock out from this range, but it's definitely getting there. But Feeb getting to an Aqua Tail, this can be huge, especially with the pressure of the Fairy Wind damage coming from the Jumpluff.
Yeah, he might be able to just Fairy Wind down at this point, especially since there are two shields left. And he does have that Blastoise for the Diggersby as well, so he's not needing to rely on this Grass-type Energy Ball to take out that Diggersby later in the game.
I like the adjustment by Feeb bringing on the Blastoise here, predicting that Adelian's MVP Diggersby from the first game is for sure coming again, and that way making sure that the Diggersby really is taken care of. And
it's
we
a nice
do
little
see
catch
the
by
Blastoise
Adelian as well.
Yep. Let's see if it matters in the end. We do see some Blastoise action, throwing on alignment here.
Adelian is going to shield that first one, but I'm not sure. Do you know if Scorching Sands debuffs can potentially keep this Diggersby out of Hydro Cannon two-shotting?
We are about to find out. Might even see a second Scorching Sand No, the first one didn't debuff. That is very unfortunate.
Or very fortunate if you are supporting Phoebe, I guess. But that Scorching Sands
Very
is going to
true.
get close to two-shotting as well. And he makes a catch
do
onto this Primate.
That is an excellent catch again, especially relying on the Diggersby again, despite not being the best Pokemon into both of these, especially because you still have to knock out the Jumpluff in the back, and the Jumpluff has Energy Ball as well for the Diggersby, so this might be still a rough game for Adelian.
Yeah, the Scorching Sands is just not pacing as quickly as that Hydro Cannon is. And oh no, Phoebe makes the catch of that Scorching Sands. That is an amazing catch by Phoebe, and I think this is just over if it wasn't already.
This is an amazing catch for sure. Triple resisted Scorching Sands catch on the Jumpluff. This is definitely something you never want to throw as the Diggersby. You'd barely tank the ArelHydae, the Energy Ball, but this is for sure in ArelHydae, or might even be in farm down range by fast attacks at this point.
Yeah, I think Phoebe does have the ArelHydae, and he's looking to just go for that to take out that Diggersby and tie up the series 1-1.
Yep. Especially like it for Phoebe that he now has the momentum coming back from that very close first game and making some dominant plays and some exciting and cool catches in the second game now, which is exactly as close as we saw the first game the series can be now, is considering we are 1-1 now.
Yeah, so if you're Adelian, you might need to look to readjust to that Jumpluff again. Maybe he didn't expect the Jumpluff lead after how poorly it performed in game 1 for Phoebe, but it did very well there in game 2. So Adelian actually doesn't have that many options against the Jumpluff. Might have to lean into the Gligar, try that out, or go back to that Dedenne that very strongly won the zeros in game 1.
Jumpluff can especially be so powerful as a lead because Shadow Drapion is usually rather a pivot or broad in the back in general, so not in the lead. And even if they're still, you can still play it like the Zero Shields as a Jumpluff. It's not as good as if you had Acrobatics, but it's still not the worst matchup considering Shadow Drapion can't throw any super effective charge attack damage.
Yeah, especially since it is that regular Jumpluff, it just takes the crunch a lot better than that Shadow version does. And the ArelHydae in the 1 shields, I believe, does get the 2-shot KO. So just barely makes it a good matchup in the 1s, but the 0s and 2s slightly not in its favor, given that it's not running Acrobatics.
So we are about to head into game 3 and see what adjustments these two trainers will bring. We do see the Diggersby lead now by Phoebe, and the Jumpluff in the back. We do see the Drapion lead by Adelian that we were thinking to see into Jumpluff, but this time the Jumpluff is brought in the back by Phoebe.
Yeah, Phoebe making a nice read, realizing that Adelian's probably going to try and be a bit stronger into that Jumpluff lead this game. And that's a nice catch by Adelian onto his own Diggersby, just banking some Drapion energy and absorbing this Scorching Sands on his own.
I do like that in general, because Drapion energy is pretty much useful anywhere into AlphaFeeb's team. We do see an attempted catch on the Scorching Sands by Phoebe, but does not get it.
So but even so, this is okay, because he got that Scorching Sands debuff onto the Diggersby, so those Fire Punches just do nothing.
Yeah, this will take a lot of Fire Punches. I'm out. It can tank the aerial aces quite well in general as well.
Yeah, we'll have to see what Adelian does from here, because this is not a good position for him. Gets the CMP tie on the Fire Punch. Is maybe going to try and swap out into the Drapion here just to get rid of this Jumpluff.
Yeah. Considering that Jumpluff is about to take the 4th Fire Punch, it looks like Adelian decides to stay in and let the... Well, could decide to shield the Diggersby, but is probably letting it go at this point. Yeah. We do see the Drapion coming back.
Is he going to try and go for a big farm down here? Because this ArelHydae doesn't threaten as much as the Scorching Sands does, so he has no incentive to shield this. Yep. Maybe he's just going to try and go for a big Poison Sting down before this next ArelHydae, but does he get it?
He does not get it, so he's going to throw the Aqua Tail beforehand. I would have also seen an argument for AlphaFeeb out and save the jump left, depending on what he expects in the back. But seems like he doesn't want to keep the alignment of Diggersby into Drapion, despite the Drapion having some energy now. But so does the Diggersby.
Yeah, Drapion just going to shield up that Fire Punch to make sure it fires off its own Aqua Tails here into this Diggersby. The Diggersby, after taking some quick attack damage from Adelian's Diggersby, is actually getting closer into that Aqua Tail range. So we'll have to see what Adelian has in the back to potentially finish off this Diggersby and then beat the whole Drapion as well.
We do see a great CMP by Adelian here, as well as getting a shield from AlphaFeeb, valuable, valuing the Diggersby very much. So now we have the Jellicent with a shield against the Diggersby, and unfortunate for Adelian, we have a Shadow Drapion in the back for AlphaFeeb.
However, Feeb has given this Jellicent a big energy head start and does not debuff with the Scorching Sands. So Adelian might be able to finish off this Diggersby and the Drapion just with 3 surfs.
Let's see, this will for sure gonna be a close one. We might even see a bait from AlphaFeeb here. Now is gonna get the
we'll have to see whether Adelian needs to call a bait or if he actually can just outpace to the double surf from here, because it does look like it would get the 2-shot.
AlphaFeeb going for the crunch here, thinking Adelian might call the bait, but no, Adelian is going to shield it. And you were entirely correct. That Jellicent is going to outpace. And we do see the CMP shield from the Diggersby costing AlphaFeeb that game, and Adelian winning 2-1 over AlphaFeeb on this one.
Yeah, very well played by Adelian, just baiting out that energy ball jump off with the Diggersby, right? That still has Fire Punch to do a bit of damage, and then sweeping with that Jellicent upper shield in the end game. Feeb maybe not reading the Jellicent in the back, thinking it was something else, like maybe his own the Drapion was in the lead. Maybe his own Dedenne or something, maybe to keep the Diggersby alive for that.
Especially after how unfortunate the beginning of the third game played out for Adelian. He did not win the lead. He got debuffed pretty early. Then he had the unfortunate Diggersby and jump off matchup, but just having the Jellicent with a shield closed that one out. And definitely that was quite impressive in the end.
Yeah, so Adelian taking the win over Feeb. It's not looking great for the NA casters at the moment, but I'm sure that will change later. However, first, we actually have, I believe, a European against a South American caster, and I believe Axon will be taking over for that one.
I think we welcome back Axon pretty much now. Welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, my fellow North American players here not doing as well as I'd like so far, but keep in mind, that was just, I believe, the third of the 14 battles we're going to see today. There's a chance we'll see some North American wins later down the line.
Yeah. So now we have CountXevious battling against Omar, which I would happily abbreviate as just Omar. What do you think about these teams, Peyton?
Yeah, well, the first thing I see here is, once again, I'm casting my own team here. Omar running the Araquanid team that I brought to NAIC. I love this Pokemon, and honestly, it does have a bit of play into CountXevious' side. Shadow for Alligator is a Pokemon you don't see too often, but the Araquanid, the Lapras, the Dedenne, honestly, there's really no targets for that Gator here on Omar's side, so I wouldn't expect to see too much of that, but I know Shadow Annihilate from experience can be a little bit tricky to deal with Araquanid and the rest of the team on Omar's side.
We also do see the Cradily coming back. This time it actually plays Acid as its fast move, which is probably not preferred into Omar's team, but it's still going to be a very annoying Pokemon that has been quite popular in the last month.
Yeah, I mean, another thing we should point out is this Lapras on Omer's side. He's not running Ice Beam like I ended up doing at NAIC, which means that Cradilly is actually going to have quite a bit of play into this team. I know that Cradilly can even take down Shadow Drapion in the 2s, just straight Rock Tomb, thanks to the Acid addition or the Acid buff in this season. So really, unless you align that Dusclops into the Cradilly, that could be a very strong Pokemon here for CountXevious.
I'm excited to see our first battle, which should be coming up soon. Some very similar picks and some very unique picks on both sides. We do see the Araquanid into the Dedenne and an immediate swap into Shadow Drapion already as a safe swap, and the first Aqua Tail already thrown.
Shadow Drapion, one of the only Pokemon that can outpace a Dedenne and go for the Aqua Tail before a defense boost is going to be had. We see a no-shield on the Aqua Tail. That's honestly pretty good to see here, because a Araquanid at this point, well, it's not going to be great against this Pokemon in the back line. Bug Bites do still do 2 damage. There's a chance you can Bug Bite it down if they swap out. We do see the switch, and honestly, I'm so surprised to see it. Shadow Feraligatr ends up coming in.
That's a very aggressive trying to farm down with resisted Shadow Claws into the Shadow Drapion, especially because you no-shield the Crunch here, barely getting off your Hydro Cannon as you're about to faint.
Honestly, at this point, I'm a little surprised not to even see his shield. You could farm that down, gone for a Crunch or an Aqua Tail into whatever would come in, but also maybe you don't care about Switch as much now that this Gator has been baited out. I mean, Dusclops, as long as it can avoid a Pokemon like that Shadow Drapion in the backline, it should have some play, but it's going to come down to if it's going to have play with that Dedenne still alive in this game too. This is going to be an interesting match. We landed the Aqua Tail though, so Araquanid, it might be able to farm down, as I was saying, against this Pokemon, and instant swap out into the Dusclops.
It is actually the Cradilly in the back, but to be honest, the Dedenne is also fairly low at this point, while the Araquanid is basically full HP, so this is for sure going to still be exciting and very close.
Yeah, we see an instant shield on that first Ice Punch. We know Cradilly's big gimmick is that it goes through these Rock Tombs. It lowers the attack stat every single time you throw this move. It's going to be a little bit awkward trying to knock out this Dusclops because 2 do not quite KO here from full HP. So after a couple of acids, you might be able to 2-shot, but Dusclops is going to fire these Ice Punches off, potentially putting this into Bug Bite downrange. And the best thing about Araquanid is while it is weak to Rock and while it is weak to Electric, it can survive both of the charge moves from this Cradilly and that Dedenne in the back line. You can Bug Bite down Cradilly as well. It's going to be a really close endgame.
I'm probably the worst person to ask about Araquanid, since I never played it, but I entirely trust you on that one, and I'm excited to see whether Araquanid is going to be able to close that one out.
Question now being, do you want to shield this move? We do see a shield on the attack, and then a catch. What move is going to be thrown? If I saw that right, they might have just Grass Knotted a second ago. Did we catch a Grass Knot? No, as a Rock Tomb. Okay. Our attack has now been lowered, but it does not actually lower the amount of fast move pressure that we have here, although now you've also cleared the debuff that was on that Dusclops.
Looks like we might just rely on the Dusclops, actually, which does have some energy, and you are close to 2 Shadow Punches at this point. Even with the defense boost, that should be close to knocking out the Dedenne. We even see a shield, which does not matter as it's gonna get outpaced again.
Yeah, at this point, this game, from what looked like a very awkward lead matchup, might be in Omar's favor. All he needs is a Shadow Punch here.
Yeah.
Ice Punch will be reached at the same time, but either way, just throwing any sort of charge move will be able to knock this Pokemon out. Coming back from Dedenne into a Araquanid is a very impressive feat. That Shadow Drapion put in so much work in the mid-game, and Dusclops here in the backline. We knew Cradilly was always going to be a threat into Omar's team. So knowing that that would likely be in the backline, trusting in that Dusclops, and closing out the endgame with it was a very tactical play by Omar.
We've just seen the dominance of the Shadow Drapion Dusclops core again as well. Like Araquanid, it was there, and it tanked 2 charge moves, and it tanked 2 charge moves very well, but that was about it, what it did in this game. But if that is enough, then for sure Araquanid is going to work here.
I mean, we saw the Shadow Feraligatr get brought. I kind of wonder if we see it get dropped here in game number 2. I mean, it could have potentially put in some work there, but it ended up taking a full-on crunch which made it so, honestly, at that point, it didn't have much play. It was either going to get farmed down by the Arachnid or by that Shadow Drapion. I don't see the target aside from that Dusclops here, and you have other ways to deal with Dusclops on this team, mainly Shadow Drapion. I would love to see a Shadow Drapion swap over here by CountXevious, potentially over that the Shadow for Alligator spot. That should be a good idea. If you were me, at least that would be a Pokemon I'd lean into this team.
I definitely agree. I'm a Drapion enthusiast as well. And this one, especially because both of them are Shadow, that is pretty good as a safe swap as well, where the Shadow is generally preferred over the normal one. And I'm excited to see what the adjustments are for the second game. It looks like
the Arachnid once again into another kind of tricky matchup here. Shadow Dusclops takes 2 damage per turn from Bug Bite, but this is the regular, so we do see the instant pivot. Actually, just the straight-up run back of the team here by Omar. Once again, not in a great spot, and a Shadow Annihilate, probably the best counter that this Shadow Drapion could be up against. I don't know exactly how much play he's going to have here, because at this point, where does this Dusclops go? There's probably a Dusclops answer in the back. It's going to be so hard.
I think CountXevious at this point recognizes that he can no-shield one move, which he actually does, and then probably tries to farm down or gets close to farming it down. He probably throws on CMP here, the Rage Fist, and is boosted with some energy out of that matchup. But we do see a shield from Oma actually coming up, just to try to get switch advantage.
A smart shield here, because you guarantee either getting switch or getting the second shield, which means you're still going to have a shield advantage. You might potentially be able to Bug Bite this down. Annihilate is at +1 attack, so these Rage Fists are going to add up. Counter is resisted, though. I think we just have to hope that there's not going to be a Shadow Drapion in the backline. If that's what's back there, I don't know if Dusclops has play, but if it's that Shadow for Alligator, there is a chance that you can outpace a 2 Shadow Punches, shield a Hydro Cannon, maybe still have some play in this match.
I would have also loved to see the no-shell from CountXevious here, knowing that maybe the Dusclops can make something work, considering the Shadow Drapion would be gone for Oma. But looks like it worked out perfectly as Omar predicted, and now we have a Dusclops mirror.
What an interesting play here. We see the Dusclops come in, and rather than coming in with the final Pokemon, we see the opposing Dusclops try to mirror. Now, while we also saw that the Dusclops on Omar's side win CMP, you do survive 2 Shadow Punches here no matter what, but getting this Dusclops out of the way could be huge, but it could also be telling that there might be yet another Arachnid counter in the backline, maybe like that Dedenne, which might not be great, or maybe, if we're going to be a little bit more optimistic, it could be a Pokemon like that Cradilly that both your Pokemon have play into, and they couldn't really bring in Cradilly here. I guess we'll have to see at this point. We see a shield, likely a farm down against his opposing Dusclops.
I am expecting the Cradilly, and it looks like it is actually the Cradilly, which is good for CountXevious because the Dusclops is about to be in Rock Tomb range at this point, and we do see the Rack when it counter swap.
Yeah, once again here, the dancing around by Omar, making these bad positions look not all that tricky. You survive this Rock Tomb, you might even get to a Water Pulse here. Bug Bite is super effective, Water Pulse is neutral, so I think unless the Annihilate can put in a lot of work in the backline, there is a good chance that Omar has to win this. What I'm concerned about, though, is if this knocks out, then Annihilate gets a huge farm down here. It can go for a Rage Fist into that Dusclops. That is the one win condition that I can see right now for CountXevious. Can the Annihilate do it?
Looks like he's going back to the Dusclops, which is probably because the Annihilate is just too low at this point to be able to close that game out. And it looks like Omar barely won that one with some great catches in place overall.
What an impressive game there by Omar. What an impressive set, I should say. Both games, his Arachnid was not in a great spot, but he did not mind that Pokemon. One of the bulkiest in the meta right now. Bug Bite always does something. It's a great fast move. And while, honestly, Arachnid didn't line up into anything it wanted to see, it was able to do enough to make it so the Shadow Drapion and the Dusclops backline could kind of neutral game their way through the team. Cradilly obviously always coming against this team here. So the ability to just kind of dance around that, know that Dusclops should be good in the backline was a very heads-up play here by Omar. And it just proved why Arachnid, why Shadow Drapion, and why Dusclops right now, they were just so top meta Pokemon that we saw at NAIC, and why going forward here, I think we're going to see a lot more in the tournament.
I'm especially impressed by just the sheer amount of damage that the Bug Bites did, even in the matchups that are not necessarily considered favorable in general, which just makes it such an annoying Pokemon to deal with in general. And Omar relies.
We lost Rob, guys. Anywho, I think what Rob's trying to say is, yeah, very, very well played. We should be getting into this next match here with MEweedle here in just a second. And I'm excited to see where these two battlers are going to go in the next couple of rounds of the tournament. All right, welcome on in, Weedle. I hope you enjoyed that last match there. Once again, another Araquanid. This time, it actually was brought. Very cool to see. Didn't have the best matchups there, but it was still able to put in enough work.
Yeah, I'm very impressed by Omar's play because he's not a name that I'm that familiar with, but the way that he played around those negative leads was very impressive to watch.
Yeah, I mean, he kept getting the bad leads there. He was able to overcome them. And honestly, Araquanid would do so good in this matchup against Lou's team, but there is no Araquanid to be seen. But there is a Golisopod on debbiepebble side.
Yeah, we do have that Golisopod with the Fury Cutter over the Shadow Claw. And we also have a Mandibuzz here, which is running Snarl instead of the usual Air Slash that people have opted for in this meta at the moment.
Yeah, I think that Snarl is a little bit better into the Ghost type, so we don't see a Ghost type here. In fact, we see two Dark types, two Pokemon you would have much preferred to have that Air Slash damage against, as well as the Azumarill. So I think Mandibuzz, it's a little bit RPS in this matchup. You might bring it to try to counteract the Gastrodon, but saying how strong your Golisopod already is, I could see benching the Mandibuzz, rely on that Golisopod, maybe also rely on the Shadow Scizor, another Pokemon that looks pretty safe here. At least it has play into most of these Pokemon, either super effective Trailblaze or just a massive amount of Bullet Punch damage.
Yeah, even though it does have that super effective Trailblaze, the resisted Bullet Punches really make matchups like that Gastrodon or that Greninja just slightly worse or slightly unfavorable, where the more shields are used by the Greninja and Gastrodon. Something else that might be important to note here are some of the movesets that Lou is running on her Pokemon.
Oh, yeah. Is this correct? A Hydro Pump Greninja, not Hydro Cannon. That's a unique addition to the moveset and a unique playstyle where maybe your opponent would be expecting just a Hydro Cannon. It's not going to one-shot a Diggersby. Potentially Hydro Pump could catch people off guard if they don't read that team sheet correctly. That could be an interesting idea. We also see the Hydro Pump on the Azumarill, which, I mean, I guess double pump, why not? We'll see if that's going to have any play here in this game.
Yeah, maybe if she can get shields down against that Scizor, that would be fun to watch it getting blasted by an Azumarill. Because the Azumarill usually runs the Ice Beam moveset, which is resisted by the Scizor. So maybe looking to do some damage there, or against that Diggersby as well, just get the massive one-shot after doing a lot of bubble damage.
The Golisopod looks really good for Debbie, but I'm excited to see what these two trainers are going to do here in game number 1. Shadow's Scizor in the lead up against the Hydro Pump Azumarill. We see that Lou is staying in here. You do actually have that neutral charge move of Hydro Pump. Honestly, though, that's a little bit overkill. Honestly, in this match, we can go straight Ice Beam, and Shadow Scizor probably still shields because of how squishy it is. Trailblaze being thrown, ramping up the Shadow Scizor.
Yeah, Debbie probably just going to look to shield whatever move Lou throws here, as this Scizor is now boosted and will just be doing so much damage with the bullet punches. So we will have to see how Lou is going to somehow clear this Scizor off the field, as this is not a great start. Decides to save sort the Gastrodon, but there are two really good Gastrodon answers in the back.
I'm a little bit surprised by the Golisopod coming in here. I thought, in all honesty, that the Mandibuzz would never be brought into this game. If you're going to bring a Mandibuzz, honestly, this is its one good matchup. You might as well bring it here if you can. Potentially a read that there could be a Pokemon like that Shadow Scizor in the back line, so you want to keep Mandibuzz for that. But, I mean, Golisopod is good here, but that Cradily could put in some work now that the Bug-type Pokemon here has been baited out, but Shadow Scizor is still around. So I don't know how much work that they can necessarily do in the back line. We'll see. Mandibuzz probably doesn't have as much play, but Cradily still has a lot to try to get through.
Yeah, and it is a Bullet Seed Cradily as well, so it does have that resisted fast move into the Mandibuzz and double resisted into the Sizzle. So even the Sizzle that's like in the low yellow is still just going to be not taking any damage from those Credilli fast moves in the end game. But this Gastrodon is still around, is going to be able to take out this Golisopod. So maybe Lou is going to look to try and keep this Gastrodon alive to get that Mudslap damage against that Sizzle later.
Now that we've taken out the Golisopod, if you're ever too slow swapping back in your Shadow Caesar into the Cradilly once it comes in, there's a chance a Rock Tomb can just knock you out. There is a bit of play here still for Lou, but this Mana Buzz is going to overfarm probably up to about 100 energy here. I think ArelHydae should be about enough to knock out at this point. Dark Pulse being thrown to guarantee the KO on CMP with a Body Slam. A little bit of unnecessary chip damage that we're going to take, but I think honestly it's not going to make it so one Bullet Seed or one Rock Tomb rather knocks out from a Bullet Seed Cradilly. So either way, this is still going to be a very tricky endgame matchup. We'll see what this Mandibuzz can try to do.
It is actually even a Rock Slide Cradilly there with the Bullet Seed. So it's just going to pace slightly more quickly. Oh, actually forces the Trailblaze from that Sizzle. Maybe Debbie expecting something else to come in here, but it's going to be throwing all of its energy into that Azumarill. And here comes in the Cradilly, but it just takes so much damage from Bullet Punch.
Yikes. I mean, even with that extra pacing of Rock Slide here, I guess I got to read these team sheets even more thoroughly. I don't think we can outpace here. The Night Slash just straight up knocks out after the boost. Shadow Caesar just unwinding the entire team here. That's how scary that Pokemon can be. We saw Golisopod have play. Honestly, if Golisopod lined up into that Cradilly in the backline, we saw Mandibuzz into Gastro. That game wouldn't have been anywhere near as close as we saw it there, but it was a very close endgame because of that. Shadow Caesar just had too much HP, could not get Bullet Seeded down, and Cradilly was not able to knock out the Mandibuzz.
Yeah, Debbie played really well with that Sizzle, just boosting up her Bullet Punch damage and keeping it alive and healthy to take out that Cradilly later in the game. So Lou might have to somehow adjust to this Sizzle, but how? Because she already brought the Gastrodon. So maybe looking to bring the Moltres or the Greninja potentially?
What I wouldn't hate as an adjustment here is if you lead something strong into the opposing Shadow Caesar. So if Lou leads, for example, either the Gastrodon, maybe the Moltres, you can safe swap your Shadow Caesar and up energy. Your own Shadow Caesar does look pretty tricky into Debbie's team. It has the ability to outpace the Night Slashes against the Quagsire. You can go Trailblaze into a lot of things as well. Maybe just 2-shield farm down a lot of these Pokemon, even Golisopod, who technically resists the Bullet Punch damage. In the 2s, you just lose straight up Night Slash there. So I think if Lou invests in that Shadow Caesar, that could be a good way to potentially come back in game number 2. We saw Shadow Caesar on Debbie's side, so maybe a bit of inspiration coming through on Lou's side here in the next match.
Yeah, maybe Debbie is gonna. Oh, that's exactly what you called, right? With the Gastrodon lead into the Scissor, the own Scissor in the back. I mean, it's almost as if you played these games instead. But that
I guess so.
Is going to come in.
Yeah. I kind of thought that was a good idea. I didn't know if it was actually going to happen. But we do see the Golisopod safe swap, which honestly is a little bit tricky here for Lou to deal with. I think at this point, maybe going for some chip damage coming in with Azumarill after to tank the rest of this energy could be a solid play. Or if you want to play this matchup out too, I mean, you can survive a move. Shadow Caesar, though, instead coming in, potentially going to get one-shot by an Aqua Jet if it doesn't shield.
Maybe Lou knows that Debbie's just running the same line back again and knows she needs to keep that Azumarill for the Mandibuzz in the back later. So Scissor is just going to get to the fast Night Slash here against this low health Golisopod because realizes that the Golisopod is at another Aqua Jet and just wants to grab a shield before going down.
The boost, unfortunately, on a CMP, the most useless boost that is even possible in this game. Aqua Jet will knock out the Shadow Caesar, unfortunately, meaning now you are going to be down a shield, you lose switch advantage. Although Azumarill in the back line, if Shadow Caesar tries to come back in here, could have some play in a Mandy. No, instead we do see Mandibuzz come in and up a shield. Mandy is already going to win that matchup, and Shadow Caesar is easily going to be able to shield a Hydro Pump, finish off this Azumarill. And it looks like Debbie is in such a fantastic spot here in game number 2.
Yeah, with that Gastrodon in the back with no shields left, right? A Trailblaze is just going to kill like the whole family. And I'm sure Lou is not very pleased with that idea of all her beloved Gastrodons dying, but it doesn't look like she has much of a choice at this point.
Yeah, just the shield into the farm down, into a +1 Trailblaze, into that poor Gastrodon. This is not looking great If you are a Gastrodon lover, look away now. Hold on, we have the Earth Power. This is going to snipe them down right before the Trailblaze is reached. Does Gastrodon have even a sliver of a chance against Mandibuzz? I don't think so, but at least it's not going to get one-shot by a Trailblaze here. There's a silver lining in this matchup.
Yeah, just slightly relieves the pain a tiny bit, I guess. But yeah, this flying Vulture is just not going to take any Mudslap damage, and the Body Slam with the nerf recently or semi-recently is just not going to do anything to this bulky Mandibuzz. And it already is at the second Dark Pulse, yeah.
This is going to easily finish off the Gastrodon. Unfortunately, for the Gastrodon lovers out there, not quite able to close out the game. It did have a good lead against the Shadow Caesar, but as we thought, once those shields went down, Shadow Caesar, it has energy that goes anywhere, or the Bullet Punch damage adds up. Even those good matchups like that Gastrodon get flipped potentially by that energy. Debbie playing around with that Shadow Caesar expertly. Lou attempted to use the Shadow Caesar in game number 2, but down shields, Shadow Caesar is so much trickier to use, and it wasn't able to quite do what it needed to, despite the attempt at a boost there right before it got knocked out.
Yeah, very well played by Debbie, just recognizing that Shadow Scizor and Golisopod are very strong into Lou's team if she can somehow gain a shield or energy advantage, right? So the Fury Cutter and Aquajet pacing, even against something like a Azumarill, stands a chance there in the 2 shields, just because of how fast it is and how much pressure the newly buffed Fury Cutter has.
Yeah, I've been a big Araquanid fan here in this season, but Golisopod is basically a Araquanid, but that actually can do some real damage and is a little bit more spammy on the charge moves. So a very fun Pokemon here. I'm excited to see if we might see more Golisopod here down the line in the future battles. I believe soon we'll have Mr. Dancing Rob come back with us for our next match.
And here I am. Thank you, Axon, for the shout-out. And we are looking at 2 battlers that I'm not the most familiar with yet, but that makes it just even more exciting. What do we think about these teams, Maxwell?
Well, the first thing that stands out to me is obviously going to be that Registeel. That's an interesting pick in this meta. I guess it resists that Bullet Punch from the Scizor, which is maybe why Arel has brought it here. But otherwise, what other reasons do you think for Registeel in this current meta?
For the nostalgia, maybe? The 2022-2023 nostalgia? No. I'm quite sure it is going to be a little bit tough to bring into a Quagsire and Annihilate team. And even just having all your moves resisted by the small Dedenne is probably going to be tough. And yeah, besides that, we have a double water line by Arel, which is interesting. We do see no grass type on either side, so those might be very neutralish.
Yeah, I think that you made a good call there, but there is that Trailblaze instead of a grass type, right, on that Furret. So maybe, you know, that will be enough to scare away the water types a bit more, as well as that Dedenne. The Furret's kind of replacing the grass type, but it is slightly better against like ghost types than, for example, the Cordelias. However, Arel does not have a ghost type for that Furret Sucker Punch to be targeting.
I'm also surprised to see a normal Drapion instead of a Shadow. That's something we haven't seen a lot so far, as we're about to head in our first battle pretty soon, I would expect. And we do see some water-type actions. We do see Greninja facing off against the Quagsire. The backline from Arel definitely wants... My apologies.
Yeah, I was about to say it is the non-Shadow Quagsire, right? So just takes that Hydro Cannon a tiny bit better than the Shadow one would.
Exactly. We do see the backline from Arel that really loves to avoid the Quagsire as well. So I do respect the shield because you really would love to get rid of the Quagsire. We do see a swap out actually into the Ferret by Jogada, which is probably the one Pokemon that doesn't really want to see the Greninja. So that is quite an interesting slot.
Yeah, however, it is upper shield and it does have that Trailblaze. So maybe he thought that that would be an okay matchup for him once he has got that shield advantage and is looking to really threaten the Greninja with a Trailblaze. However, Arel is going to swap out into that Drapion and catch a Swift instead of a Trailblaze.
I do like the swap regardless, especially because you can tank 2 Swift and you just don't get pressured by the feint attacks from Ferret that much. You can also wrap up some extra energy before throwing on CMP here, which is some good counting by Arel.
The problem here is just that Annihilate in the back. If you look at the team on Arel's side, it's a Greninja and a Diggersby, so he's ran ABA weak into that Annihilate and now might get punished by it.
He might have a chance by wrapping up a lot of energy for the Annihilate, but we do see him getting the move off here as well, which is some nice chip damage. Let's see if it will matter in the end, but yeah, this Annihilate is going to be tough to deal with in any way. The Greninja should have some energy, though, at least. So
yeah, maybe needs to hope the Water Shuriken gets it into like Scorching Sands range after Jogada shields this Hydro Cannon. But it's going to be looking tough. Quick Attack's just double resisted, and it's a non-Shadow Annihilate, so it's just not going to be taking as much damage.
Opting to go for the extra Water Shuriken as well, instead of swapping to the Diggersby immediately, shielding up the Ice Punch correctly, but I just don't think that this is gonna be Scorching Sands range against the normal Annihilate already.
However, if it does get an attack drop, then maybe it will survive enough to get to that Fire Punch, although that Scorching Sands did a lot. I don't think this Ice Punch KOs.
Let's see how bulky Diggersby actually is. I might have been wrong on that one. This is very close. And actually, the Diggersby closes it off. That is impressive.
Yeah, very well played by Arel, despite being ABA weak into that Annihilate, able to finish it off with that Greninja getting it into the Scorching Sands range, and the fact that it's not a close combat on that Annihilate means that the Diggersby was able to survive the Ice Punch and just finish it off.
I entirely agree. I think we also saw that the Hydro Cannon Greninja might just be a little bit better than the Hydro Pump Greninja that we've seen earlier, if that ever was up to that much of a debate.
Yeah, you're probably right there. Just the pacing on that Hydro Cannon is really important, and it's such a high damage per energy move as well. So, yeah, I wonder how Jogada will adapt to that Greninja, because it did cause him a lot of problems with that Quagsire lead and the Ferret with the resisted Sucker Punches just not being able to do as much as it would like to.
At the same time, I'm curious how Arel will adapt to the Annihilate, which, to be honest, looks really strong into nearly everything in his team. Maybe besides especially the Dedenne, which puts up some good play.
Yeah, but because that Dedenne is the only Annihilate answer, and Jogada did bring that Quagsire game one, it might kind of, Arel maybe feels a bit pressured about where to bring the Dedenne, because it's either going to land on a good matchup in that Annihilate or an absolutely terrible one in that Quagsire.
At the same time, the Dedenne is apparently running Tackle, though, which does make the Annihilate matchup significantly worse. So I'd be really curious to see if we see some Dedenne actions as we're heading into Game 2 pretty soon. We do see the Dedenne, but not in the lead. We first see Drapion into Annihilate. And
maybe with the Tackle Dedenne, it's actually got some play in the mirror matchups, some slightly better play, but we'll have to see how that plays out. the regular Drapion into the regular Annihilate, those Aqua Tails just aren't doing as much as what you're used to with the Shadow Drapion.
Especially curious to see the immediate throw of the Aqua Tail, not trying to get a crunch debuff early on, and another Aqua Tail actually, which might be a good play as a bait, and Jogada actually shielding the Aqua Tail as well here.
And he is able to outpace to another Aqua Tail over that second Ice Punch. So this Annihilate is actually going to be very low, but I think it will hang on and cleanly win the one shield matchup with this next Ice Punch.
That was slightly closer than I expected, considering how good the Annihilate is into Arel's team in general right now. We do see actually the tackle the Dana on screen, trying to farm down an Annihilate, but not until it gets hit with another Rage Fist, which is shielded up though.
Yeah, the tackle not better here into this Annihilate. However, when we look at the backline, maybe that's why he's bringing tackle, right? For the neutral fast move into the Quagsire and into Jogada's own Dedenne. It's going to go for a parabolic charge, which is resisted into this Quagsire, and it is no shielded as well.
At least you'll be able to survive a charge move better at this point. Going for another parabolic charge, which is still resisted. I'm curious about these plays and how it will end up. For sure, Arel will like the backline though, having the Diggersby onto the Dedenne. However, swapping it right in and now getting hit by a few Aqua Tails by the Quagsire, I can imagine.
Yeah, so even if he were to have that Diggersby on the Dedenne in the back, this Quagsire is just too strong into Arel's team, especially with the 3 Pokemon he brought, right? Being triple weak to that Quagsire with the poison weakness on the Drapion and the groundwater weakness with his Diggersby and Dedenne in the back. This Quagsire, even though it's in the red, I think it's going to get another Aqua Tail off against this Diggersby.
Yep. It might even get off another Aqua Tail against the Dedenne, who is trying to tackling down that Quagsire, I can imagine. However, Jogada swapping and just closing that game off with his own Dedenne, revealing his 3rd Pokemon, which will be the end of our 2nd game, tying the series 1-1.
Well played by Jogada there, right, with that, bringing just that Quagsire, making the read that maybe that Dedenne will come this game. But yeah, it is indeed a tackle Dedenne, so that's an interesting choice by Arel, but it just means that the Annihilate has so much play and is completely free into Arel's entire team.
I'm curious to see how Arel wants to adapt for the 3rd game, because the Quagsire and Annihilate combination is very strong into their team in general. How would you play that out? What do you think, Maxwell?
Maybe he needs to try and lean a bit into that Lapras with the super effective Psy Waves, right? Maybe that would be interesting. But the Lapras is so hard to bring into this matchup with the Furret, Sizzle, and Dedenne also on Jogada's team, as well as the super effective Stone Edge from the Quagsire. So Arel is probably just going to have to make a tough call here and try and maybe play around like he did with game 1, where he managed to get shields with the Greninja and later off finish it with that Diggersby.
On the Drapion on the Annihilate again could be a play, but we'll see in any second what these battlers are going to bring to the game 3 now. We do see the Greninja, but unfortunately it sees the Annihilate, which is the one Pokemon you definitely don't want to see. However, he also has Diggersby in the back, so what are you going to do?
Yeah, this is not a
We
great
do see
position for Arel as he throws on alignment as well, so that whole counter will be sneaking through. He might not get to a second move, but Jogada does throw this Rage Fist into the low health Greninja.
At this point, there's probably no point in shielding, just because you're not going to get to another move on this one. Now you have to Drapion and Annihilate, but having the Annihilate boosted already is not going to make your matchup easier, even though you have a shield advantage.
Yeah, this Annihilate is boosted and so healthy. How is Arel going to be able to get rid of this?
You for sure don't want the Diggersby on the Annihilate, so you're for sure shielding, but we might see a swap from Jogada pretty soon as well. Considering how strong he must feel about the Quagsire in the back.
Yeah, maybe Jogada knows at this point it is that Diggersby in the back, so he's just going to keep the Quagsire healthy for it. He's going to bring it in against this Drapion, which is going to throw the Aqua Tail rather than the Crunch. So interesting play by Arel, maybe just trying to get out into that Diggersby as quickly as he can. But it isn't in Scorching Sand's range. So I have to see how Arel is going to remove this Quagsire. Because if he does, it's aligned to the Dedenne, which is a very positive matchup.
We're going to see first whether the Diggersby is going to be able to get rid of the Quagsire, because the Quagsire can spam a lot of Aqua Tails, considering the pacing of Mudshark with Aqua Tail. We do see a shield already, which is a good shield, because if you get a debuff here, that next Aqua Tail is going to take less damage. And
we'll have to see whether the debuff comes through, but it doesn't. So this Aqua Tail will be doing full damage still against this Diggersby, and the Diggersby is getting dangerously low, even in a range where Dedenne might be able to handle it later.
Especially because the Quagsire might not be in the Scorching Sands range as well, but we do see the Dedenne, which at this point should be able to KO the Diggersby and bring it back to its Pokeball.
Yeah, I don't think the Scorching Sands quite takes it out, as it does reach that parabolic charge, and even this Diggersby at like 5% health will die to this double resisted electric type move as Jogada takes the series 2-1.
These were some very close matches, surprisingly, given that I felt like there was such a unique team advantage on the right side here. That led to just some exciting battles that we were able to witness and to cast.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how Jogada does with that regular Annihilate, regular Quagsire combo in the later battles, and whether that Registeel from Arel will be able to do anything, but I'm not sure that Arel will be able to win the whole thing from here on out, as he does take a set loss here.
I would have loved to see some more tackle Dedenne action, but I'm not sure about you, but I was not sold yet on tackle on Dedenne after seeing it trying to tackle down the Annihilate.
Yeah, that was pretty rough, and even against like the Dedenne mirror, those tackles just weren't really worth the amount of energy that you lose, as opposed to running the Thundershock on Dedenne.
I think next up, we do have some NA battlers again. We will have DeFi facing off against FishOnAHeater, and I think this will be with Axon again, who is joining me here right now. Welcome back.
Good to be back here. So it looks like once again a North American battler is on screen. I think so far in the tournament they have, what's the opposite of being undefeated? Just totally have been defeated. North America not doing too well in this event, but DeFi against FishOnAHeater is going to be a very interesting matchup. I know that we're going to see a little bit of spice here. We see a Sableye, not even a Shadow Sableye on DeFi's side. Very interesting.
I would expect the Sableye to have returned at this point, which might be good into the Drapion at least. And we will just get the confirmation about it. It is actually a Power Gem Sableye, which makes it for sure better into the Galarian Moltres at least.
Yeah, honestly, Sableye does look kind of safe here. If you safe swap Sableye, most of these Pokemon are going to have to invest shields if they want to keep switch advantage into you. With that said, there are Pokemon that can just kind of like completely farm it down in the 2-shield matchup. Shadow Caesar, Galarian Moltres, not great matchups for it the longer it goes on. And it's going to be a very interesting game. Also seeing, once again, a Shadow Quagsire, although I don't know how much play you have when there's a Golisopod, a Mandibuzz, a Cradilly, and then the two Ghost types, the neutral matchups there. It's really just targeting that Diggersby. I've seen so many Quagsire this event. It'll be interesting to see once again if it's going to have play here.
What is good about the Shadow Quagsire is that it at least hits neutral into every single Pokemon. So if you can get like a energy advantage, you can probably pressure anything on DeFi's team. We'll see what these battlers are actually going to bring on their first game.
All right, first game, we see the Mandibuzz running Air Slash in the lead up against a Dusclops and an instant swap out into Shadow Drapion. Now, Shadow Drapion does have a lot of neutral play here, but Air Slash Fast Move Pressure does add up quite a bit as well. I would expect to maybe see the Mandibuzz try to take some energy and then swap into Diggersby.
This is definitely interesting staying in here. That's technically a good matchup for Mandibuzz as well, especially if the Air Slash, but at this point, I don't think you want to misalign your switch time as much, as Mandibuzz is still your best answer to the Dusclops, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, this is not a bad matchup here for Mandibuzz. Honestly, you basically win every even chilling scenario. It's more so the fact that now that Dusclops in the backline is going to be facing off against your own Dusclops, as well as a Diggersby, two matchups that are either neutral or just positive for the opposing Dusclops. I think Fishy Legs might be coming back from a bit of a bad lead here, but it depends on what he has in the back. And a catch on the Dusclops with an ArelHydae. What a play.
I love that play, considering that you really don't want to throw the ArelHydae here if you're a DeFi. You also do the foul play, so this is a shield coming up from DeFi, which makes sense because you probably also get the shield back, and going down to shields will probably help you Diggersby in general in the back.
The big issue by doing this is Dusclops is so much spammier than this Mandibuzz. The longer you stay in this matchup, the more energy it gets. But instead of a shield, we see a no shield in the foul play, and now Dusclops coming in for DeFi. It's going to be a very interesting matchup where two Shadow Punches are not quite enough to two-shot here, but it will whittle down this Dusclops quite a bit. And if there is an answer in the backline to that Diggersby, then potentially Fishy Legs has danced around a bit of a tricky matchup and might have put himself in a good position. Shadow Punch coming through against the Shadow Drapion. It should be just about enough here to knock out. What is the final Pokemon? We haven't seen it yet. Does it come in here?
It's gonna be the Moltres, actually, which is really not that good for DeFi, because it also has a shield advantage at this point. I'm not sure what she was hoping for in the back, considering that the Drapion was already gone, but this is probably not it. You do get off a second Ice Punch, though, at least. Probably getting another shield from the Galarian Moltres, who really doesn't want to tank that Ice Punch.
I'm going to be honest now. This is getting tricky for the Moltres. Sure, you're a Flying-type Pokemon, but Quick Attack and Fire Punch, that's all it's going to take to knock this thing out. You can take a move here no matter what, and Moltres doesn't have a bait move. I mean, Fly is its cheapest energy attack, and you're not going to reach 3 of those too quickly. Dusclops is still around to drain some energy, but you can Fire Punch, knock them out before an Ice Punch is even reached. Diggersby has a chance here to get a bit of an endgame sweep.
Fishy Legs probably not expecting the Diggersby, considering he no-shielded the second Ice Punch from the Dusclops, and this might actually be able to make it so DeFi wins the game, because that is very close to Fire Punch range. And considering she still has a shield, this looks rough for Fishy Legs.
If Fishy Legs has back-to-back Fly right now, he can take the win. If not, Fire Punch has been loaded up. But we see a catch, an unnecessary catch, but a catch nonetheless here. The Moltres was one Sucker Punch away from the Fly. But because now this move has been thrown into Mandibuzz, it's going to guarantee that Fire Punch is going to knock out. And I guess that means in a bit of an interesting game where DeFi did have a good lead, but not necessarily a great counter swap, we were able to still see DeFi kind of neutral game through the end of the matchup here. Deal with a Moltres up so much energy just with that shield advantage and the energy that the Dusclops was able to have to chip down that Moltres. A very precise endgame by DeFi and ending it off with such a nice little catch there to see at the end.
So this is NA showcasing how well they are actually batting. Still, you really want to make a plan how to take care of that Shadow Drapion safe swap if you're a DeFi, because you were kind of struggling with it in the first game.
Yeah, it's kind of funny to say because we had the Mandibuzz, we had the Digger's Beam, but Shadow Drapion Up Energy has play into both of those. So it's a Pokemon you're probably always going to see here. Golisopod, I know, is a Pokemon that has play into the Shadow Drapion. We do see it is running Fury Cutter, which has a lot more faster pressure. But once again, Up Energy, Shadow Drapion can have play there. So there's 4 matchups where I'd say Shadow Drapion has a lot of play, and then 2 matchups, the Mandibuzz and the Diggersby, where Shadow Drapion, it still has play. Might not be favored there, but Fishy Legs, if he knows how to dance around with it, can definitely make some work happen in game number 2.
I like to see the Golisopod in general, considering how strong it feels into Fishy Legs team. You really only don't want to see the Dusclops as much because the Fury Cutters are resisted.
Yeah, and even that Dusclops, your Aqua Jets, they're going to add up. There's neutral damage against the whole team.
Sure.
Your faster pressure adds up against most of the team that we see on Fishy Legs side. So let's see what they adjust to here in the next match. And there it is. Dancing Rob called it. The Golisopod in the lead up against the Galarian Moltres.
So this matchup is kind of interesting because Golisopod for sure outpaces here, but at the same time, Moltres should be bulky enough to tank one of those moves, while Golisopod really doesn't want to see the fly.
Yeah, we can see here the fast moves on both sides adding up. Sucker Punch here is chipping them down already below half HP before even throwing a charge move. But take a look at the HP on this Moltres. There's a chance 1 shield plus all the Fury Cutters will knock out the Moltres before a second fly will be reached. Can we get the farm down? It looks like we could have. And in comes the Shadow Drapion, a Pokemon that we were talking about is such a solid and strong pick into this team. Aqua Jet going to be thrown. I don't know if that was a CMP or not. I think if it was only on an Aqua Tail, if anything. And likely a swap out going to happen. But there it is. The CMP against the Golisopod is going to take a hit here before being able to swap out.
We do see a Aqua Tail being thrown here, and now the counter swap into the Diggersby, recognizing that probably the Mandibuzz is better in the third Pokemon from Fishy Legs, depending on what she calls will be in the back. If it's the same as last game, then it would be the Dusclops, and you would be fine either way, but generally the Mandibuzz feels slightly safer than the Diggersby into Fishy Legs team, considering there's an Annihilate that could be in the back.
Scorching Sands ends up actually landing against that Shadow Drapion, and it's all up to the Shadow Quagsire to try to win this game. And as much as I like Shadow Quagsire here, I know how kind of awkward it can be into Diggersby. An Aqua Tail does not knock out from this range. DeFi realizes that no shield's a move and gets a Scorching Sands off. I think at this point, just landing the Scorching Sands is going to make this Quagsire's life so uncomfortable. You're going to have to swap out here because you can't let a farm down happen. A lot of energy on the Shadow Quagsire could let a lot of Stone Edges land later on, but landing this move might even just be fast move farm down range, and attack drop against the Quagsire is just the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, we even see the attack drop. So actually resetting the attack, which is a smart play. You even get over move as the Galarian Moltres against the Mandibuzz. It is gonna be that saving the shield for the Quagsire Stone Edge is probably.
Yeah, at this point, 2 Aerial Aces are all you need to win this game. And honestly, even if Mandibuzz somehow goes down, you have quick attacks, you have Fury Cutters in the backline. If you need to fast move farm down, that is also a play you could make. In comes the first Aerial Ace. I believe at this point, DeFi does have the back-to-back loaded. The first one does draw the shield. The second one, though, will get the KO. And it's looking like, for once, a North American battler here is going to have a dominant showing. A 2-0 victory for DeFi against Fishy Legs. Very well played games by her. And I think, honestly, that adjustment to Golisopod, as you called out before that game started, was a very smart adjustment here for DeFi going into that second match.
Yeah, considering that the Golisopod even had still energy left at the end of the second game, just to make the game even more dominant in theory, that was quite impressive to see an NA battler win.
Yeah, we saw Moltres here on the side of Fishy Legs, although the Mandibuzz was the one that ended up coming out on top. I am not the biggest Mandibuzz fan myself. I never seem to be able to make it work. But in matchups like this, where it is so neutral, and that air slash coverage for the opposing dark types, it can be a Pokemon that is honestly a little bit tricky to take down. DeFi realized that, used it to her full potential in this game. And because of that, a 2-0 victory here is going to be seen for the first time in North American history here at this Clash of the Casters tournament. So yeah, very well played by her. I'm hoping to see more North American battlers do well in the next couple rounds, but also I am hoping that a lot of battlers from other regions as well are going to put on a good show. Excited to see what other casters are going to be bringing here in the next few rounds.
Fittingly enough, we will see HouseStark battling against Steps as our next match, as I will be rotated out for Weedle again.
Welcome back, Weedle. That was a pretty fun game to see there in that last set, and I think this next one going to be just about as fun. We see a very unique team by Steps. I believe you were able to cast the AlphaFeeb match where he had a Blastoise. We see Blastoise once again on the field.
Yeah, that Blastoise with the rollout and Hydro Cannon combination is really spammy. And if we have a look at that Blastoise into HouseStark's team, it isn't even looking that bad. As long as it avoids the Dedenne, it should be pretty decent into any other thing it can face. We'll have to see what moveset HouseStark has opted for on that Jumpluff. But with the Shadow version, I would assume it is the Acrobatics.
What's really interesting to me here, too, is HouseStark has a team that was kind of similar to the one that I brought to NAIC, although he has Shadow Jumpluff over Araquanid. That's going to give you a better fighting-type Pokemon matchup and a better matchup into, I guess, potentially a Pokemon like that Blastoise that you're able to get super effective Energy Ball into if you have it. But no, it is Acrobatics, it looks like, on the team sheet. It's a flexible Pokemon, but it also has to watch out for potentially that Tinkaton that we see on Steps' team. I think Tinkaton looks pretty safe as well into Stark's entire lineup.
Yeah, but even though that Tinkaton does resist all of that Jumpluff energy, we already know that Jumpluff actually can win the 2-shield matchup if it shields the play roughs correctly, just because of how strong Acrobatics is. But yeah, as you said, that Tinkaton looking pretty safe into most of HouseStark's team, right? With just the Diggersby being able to dish out super effective damage against that Tinkaton. So Steps maybe going to opt for that Tinkaton and pair it with something like that Blastoise to scare away the Diggersby.
Yeah, and then if you pair it up with something that can beat that Dedenne, this is going to be, I think, the recipe for success here for Steps. Blastoise, Tinkaton core is a very strong duo. And then, I mean, even Tinkaton can deal with Dedenne if you need to. Blastoise, honestly, its damage is all unresisted by that little mouse as well. So as long as the defense boosts aren't a thing, you can have play there as well into HouseStark. But I could see a Pokemon maybe like that Quagsire having play as well. It does have access to Stone Edge, which is a move that hits even that Lapras and that Jumpluff, which are probably your two worst matchups for super effective. So I think double Water plus Tinkaton, honestly, that's just a really safe team here for Steps. I would expect to see that on their side or something similar, and HouseStark is going to have to be prepared.
Yeah, we'll have to see then what Steps decides to do for this game one that we are about to get into, as he does lead that Quagsire is indeed actually a Shadow Quagsire, and it's led into that Shadow Drapion.
As we were kind of thinking here, the double water lineup, although it is an ABA variant, Quagsire, though, doesn't share a lot of weaknesses with that Blastoise, and we see a nice catch on this move from HouseStark into the Tinkaton. One of the best plays you can make here at the start of the game, because Quagsire energy is very hard to deal with.
Yeah, really nice catch on that aerial ace. It resisted into the Tinkaton and just does not do anywhere close to the amount of damage that Acrobatics is able to do. So it has so much energy on that Quagsire now banked, which goes anywhere on HouseStark's team.
You know, while the catch was good here by the Tinkaton, honestly, 2 Acrobatics are not enough to 2-shot anyway, at least not until a matchup plays out a lot longer here. So getting that chip damage as well as potentially the energy lead could make this a little bit more comfortable for HouseStark. There's a chance if you land the next Acrobatics, you fairy wind down the Tinkaton, you can potentially flip switch advantage if you want to, and that could be pretty good. It depends on what's in the backline here for Stark, but either way, if you farm this down with your Jumpluff, you're probably getting a shield back from something.
HouseStark is actually going to swap out into the Drapion and catch this play rough. Maybe trying to keep that Jumpluff alive later, expecting maybe the Blastoise in the back, or just keeping it for that Shadow Quagsire, as it will never get farmed down by those triple resisted mud shots. Steps does CMP tie the Drapion to an Aqua Tail. Smart play by HouseStark going for that CMP tie.
I think what might be happening here is there's a chance that HouseStark might have went ABA weak to Quagsire. He needed to bait this Pokemon back out. I think Diggersby might be in the back line because he wanted to have that hard answer to Tinkaton. And at this point, if it is that Diggersby, it's going to be met by a Blastoise. And if that's the case, this is not looking great for him. Stone Edge coming through. We do see the shield, so if anything can happen in this game, it's going to be by utilizing this Shadow Jumpluff to try to get as much damage off as you can. a shield on likely an ArelHydae coming through, which is interesting to me, honestly. I feel like ArelHydae would not be the most efficient shield Blastoise could have set up against this Pokemon. Either way, though, we're going to see another ArelHydae come through, and are we going to see a second shield?
Yeah, maybe shielding, maybe reading not the Diggersby, but the Dedenne in the back, and therefore wants to actually keep this Quagsire alive, not to risk the Blastoise getting caught onto that Thundershock and Parabolic Charge Pikachu clone Pokemon. Oh, and Housestock does call the Aqua Tail bait, which just doesn't take it out. Steps miscounted as well, and is now going to lose all of this Quagsire energy, and is down a shield in the last matchup.
If it is that Diggersby in the back, Diggersby has the ability to flip this matchup because we have that shield. Honestly, even without the shield, the zeros is kind of awkward for Blastoise, where 2 Hydro Cannons just barely are not enough to knock out. But having that shield loaded means you're only going to take 1 Hydro Cannon. You can go for the double Scorching Sands. And given a catch doesn't happen here on that Tinkaton, there's a pretty good chance that Housestock can actually win this game now.
Yeah, as you said, this might come down to a catch onto that Tinkaton. Although the Blastoise does take 2 Scorching Sands from that Diggersby just barely. So maybe it is going to be able to survive this next Scorching Sands and get to another Hydro Cannon, potentially winning the 0-1s.
If Blastoise can survive the next move here, it's going to also have to survive the Quick Attack and Fairy Wind damage still left over in the back line, but there's a very low HP Jumpluff, and this Blastoise does not want to take a Hydro Cannon. Are the Quick Attacks enough here? They are. They knock out the Blastoise just barely right before that move's reached, and now you're going to reach a Fire Punch or Quick Attack down. This game going in favor of Housestock despite the ABA weakness to that Quagsire.
Yeah, very well played by Housestock, recognizing that keeping that Jumpluff alive would be the key to success, to taking out that Quagsire, and then eventually gaining the shield advantage on the Diggersby to take out that Blastoise. So despite the Diggersby being kind of bad into anything but that Tinkaton, which was already aligned onto the Jumpluff, right? Still able to use it onto that Blastoise and take it out and clean up the game.
That's one of the best things about Diggersby in this meta. It's a Pokemon that it does have bad matchups, but there's not a lot of bad matchups that are just so unplayable that if you're aligned in there, you have no chance of winning. It was able to overcome the Water-type Pokemon, mainly because the rollout Fasting Pressure doesn't do too much there. If you had like Water Gun or something, maybe just 1 Hydro Cannon would have been required to knock out. But Blastoise does run that Rock-type Fasting Pressure, which is helpful into the Pokemon like that Shadow Jumpluff and the Lapras. Honestly, if Steps would have just relied a bit more on that Blastoise, there is a good chance that they could have won this game. There's the opportunity to let the, oh man, I forget, it might have been the Shadow Quagsire go at the end of the game there, and then just try to farm down the Jumpluff with the rollout damage. If they went for that play, instead of investing in the shields on the Quagsire, I think Blastoise would have swept, but by not having faith in the Blastoise, it was able to set up the Diggersby on Housestock's side. So I think in game number 2, the 3 Pokemon that Steps brought were the right 3. It's just having more faith in the Pokemon that you brought and doing what they need to do in the backline will be the way that they can win the game.
Yeah, as you said, Steps is probably looking very solid with those 3 Pokemon. So we'll have to see how Housestock will look to adjust, maybe by bringing the Dedenne, which on even energy with the Tinkaton is pretty good. However, you do want to dodge that Quagsire, which was brought in the previous game. So we'll have to see how this next game plays out and what they will lead, as it is the Credilli for Steps, and it's into the Dusclops, so a pretty good matchup for Housestock.
Looks like an ABA strong into Dedenne team here. Doesn't want to give Dedenne almost any play, protecting the Blastoise in the backline potentially. We're seeing them stay in against a Dusclops, a Pokemon that does have access to Ice Punch. And honestly, as a Dusclops user, I always try to go for an alignment throw on that first Ice Punch to get it off before this first attack drop here. Housestock, though, opting for good timing. A catch attempt and almost certainly a debuffed Ice Punch being thrown into this Blastoise. That is a phenomenal play by Steps.
Yeah, very nicely played. Swapping out into that Blastoise, catching the Ice Punch, and it's not a Dedenne in the back. It's a Jumpluff, and this is not that bad, despite Blastoise being a Water type and Jumpluff being a Grass type.
This is playing out exactly like how Steps wanted. You bait out the Jumpluff here so Shadow Quagsire doesn't have to see it. You have your Cradilly in the lead that can deal with this once you either knock them out or knock them down with the rollout Fast Pressure and the Skull Bash. So you have the Water type in the backline that likely is safe now, unless there's a Pokemon like potentially that Lapras in the back for Housestock. Another move going to be reached here against this Jumpluff. This should either get a knockout or come very close to it here.
Yeah, it does. But maybe how Stark has calculated this, because this Blastoise is dry and is in a nice farm down range for this Dusclops, and it does not reach that Hydro Cannon. So very nicely played by How Stark. Is now regained the energy that was originally caught onto the Blastoise.
Well, you do have the energy back here. What has happened, though, instead, is your HP is now below half. If you are going to get taken down by either an Aqua Tail or a Rock Tomb now, it's going to be a little bit more awkward. If you didn't have to take the extra fasting pressure building back up against that Blastoise, you might have survived an Aqua Tail or a Rock Tomb or a Grass Knot now in this game, but the chip damage on this Dusclops has added up. Another move being thrown into the Shadow Quagsire. What does that mean is in the back for House Stark? It could once again be that Diggersby, because it seems like he's a little bit worried about both of these Pokemon. And another catch against this Dusclops, this time on the Cradilly. What move is this one going to be?
It is indeed the Shadow Punch, so that is not going to do as much as the Ice Punch would be doing. And he is now going to outpace to the Rock Tomb. However, How Stark is swapping into that Diggersby, so Steps not falling for the Rock Tomb catch, and is just going to start firing off these Grass Knots against the Diggersby.
Now, Acid is a good fast move, but the one big drawback here is you're not as good into things Grass types are supposed to be good into. You're able to two-shot here with the Grass Knots, but with Shields in play, you're never going to farm this Pokemon down. Same with that Shadow Quagsire, you need Charge Boost to knock this Pokemon out. So Diggersby, while it's not in a great spot, can likely get quite a bit of damage off. With Scorching Sands, Quick Attack might be resisted, but at this point, Cradilly is low. Same with that Quagsire, so you're going to have to start shielding something. I don't know exactly when it's going to be. Shadow Quagsire, though, has 2 Aqua Tails ready to go now. Can you survive this? I'm not sure. It's going to be so close.
Yeah, How Stark might need to survive this if he wants to win this game, but it does survive. He managed to swap out. Now the question is whether he has any energy on the Diggersby and whether it might get killed through a shield potentially.
I think the problem here is this Quagsire just has a little bit too much energy. Even if you can knock out this Quagsire, there is still that Cradilly in the backline. All you need is one Acid to knock out that Diggersby, unless you have energy loaded there, and you would need a Shadow Punch right now against the Shadow Quagsire. Unfortunately, we are not quite there. Dusclops might be spammy, but the 2 catches this game, making it so the energy was wasted by House Stark. Aqua Tail knocks out the Dusclops, and Diggersby is just one fast move away from the knockout.
Yeah, very well played by Steps there. As you already mentioned, all those catches on that Dusclops energy really made sure that it was just throwing it in the wrong place, and he's able to then regain the advantage despite the negative lead, with that Blastoise, with that Quagsire baiting out the Jumpluff. Just basically perfect execution from Steps there for his game plan. And we'll have to see it then how Stark adjusts for this third game.
At this point, we've seen that they didn't even bring Tinkaton into that second game, and House Stark keeps bringing that Diggersby mainly for that Tinkaton matchup. I kind of wonder if at this point, if you're House Stark, you might just have to let it go. You know that it's not going to be able to always RPS that Tinkaton like you might want. Likely, it's going to either face off against maybe the Blastoise, maybe the Quagsire, Cradilly and Drapion, or Dusclops have also pretty good matchups into it as well. I do see that the Lapras on House Stark's side does have a lot of neutral play here. Sure, the Blastoise does have rollout into you, but Psywave adds up quite a bit over time. You're on Ice Beam, which means you have that super effective coverage for Cradilly, and it's not bad into Tinkaton. It's not bad into Drapion. It's pretty good into Dusclops, and as long as you don't take a Stone Edge, it's pretty good into that Quagsire as well. I think Lapras could be a way to try to more neutral game your way through this opponent, rather than maybe relying on that Diggersby RPS.
I actually think it is a Skull Bash Lapras on House Stark's side. So he will actually have not the super effective damage into Cradilly, but he does therefore have the nuke into the Blastoise. So kind of a little bit of a trade-off in that matchup. But maybe that's slightly better for him if he's not expecting the Cradilly again. But if he is trying to manage that Cradilly, then yeah, Lapras isn't just not going to be as good with that Skull Bash as it would be with the Ice Beam.
You are absolutely correct. Yeah, it is on Skull Bash, so I guess that's probably why it's not coming. With that said, I think it is still kind of neutral. That Tinkaton is what is making House Stark make these hard reads. It's a Pokemon he needs to know how to potentially take down here in the next game. Dusclops is neutral into it. Dedenne is neutral into it. What is House Stark going to lead here in the final game?
It is going to be that Drapion, and it catches the Cradilly, which is generally slightly favorable for the Drapion. However, the acids really add up in the 2 shields with that Rock Tomb damage, and Steps might not even hate this matchup too much.
Yeah, we're going to see an instant shield. We know Cradilly is known for one thing, and that's spamming out Rock Tombs, getting debuffs as quickly as it can. Shielding the first move here, it's not as likely that Crunch debuffs anymore. It's only a 20% chance, and we did see that the Crunch debuff was avoided. Rock Tomb comes through, does a decent chunk of damage to Drapion, but you're not quite in farm down range, at least not yet.
Yeah, not yet. But the problem for Steps here is if House Stark is leading that Drapion, maybe that Quagsire is slightly more stuck in the back this game than it was in the previous games, unless House Stark is running ABA once again.
Yeah, that's going to be the question. Is there going to be that Diggersby in the backline, or at this point, has House Stark realized that Pokemon might be a bit too RPS for him to use? If there is a Diggersby in the backline, and you can get switch advantage, though, the Shadow Drapion as well does not want to fight against that pick. We're going to see a swap out here into the opposing Shadow Drapion, and you don't get to a move, you give a full farm down over. That is catastrophic, and I think this is a telltale sign that there might be a Dusclops in the back. A Dedenne, of all things, comes into the Shadow Drapion.
Yeah, nice recognition by Steps here, running kind of his 3 strongest Pokemon into that Dedenne, expecting it to come given how free that Blastoise safe swap was last game. He's going to let go this Parabolic Charge, which does do a lot of damage, but with that energy lead, he might be able to KO with his second Aqua Tail here.
This is looking pretty tragic right now for House Stark. I know Aqua Tail should be enough to knock out through that defense boost. If you shield, the Drapion still has a lot of energy, and Dedenne has nowhere to go. Interesting. Okay, it's not the Dusclops. This is actually a little bit better here for Stark, though. It's going to be able to potentially farm down the Shadow Drapion. You're not on Energy Ball, which means that you're not going to be able to one-shot the Quagsire as easily. But as long as you shield these Stone Edges, there is a chance for you to win this game.
Yeah, this game might come down to the shield calls from both sides. You know, ArelHydae baits, Aqua Tail baits, and Steps correctly shields the first acrobatics, and it's just going to go straight for the Stone Edge himself.
I think what we have to keep in mind is, at this point, there is still a chance that Cradilly gets to another Rock Tomb. It's swapped out with a lot of energy. It is going to have Acid Fasting Pressure as well, so there's a chance here that maybe all you need to do is guarantee the shield with that Stone Edge. You might get knocked out by this next move. I think Stark might have needed to overfarm enough to be able to get to potentially an ArelHydae in the backline. It doesn't quite knock out. Can you even farm this down now? No, the Quagsire is just too bulky. It survives, and it gets the Stone Edge off.
Yeah, this will be enough to take out the Jumpluff at this 50% health range, and that wins Steps the series 2-1 against House Stark. Very well played by him, recognizing he does not need to bait an Aqua Tail there in that endgame. Just will get to the 2 Stone Edges to take out that Jumpluff.
In what I would assume would be a really tricky matchup for House Stark, he did play very well. That Tinkaton was a Pokemon that was always in the back of his mind. It was brought in game number 1, but Steps realized, if you're going to be expecting my Tinkaton, I'm just going to counter your Diggersby. Make it so if you want to try to beat me, you're going to have to try to RPS me, but it's not even going to work because there is no Pokemon for that Diggersby to see. We did see in game number 3 as well, that strategy worked out, where you scared off the Diggersby, Shadow Drapion, which is so free in the backline there, that it was able to put in a lot of work against basically everything he had left. And while there might have been that Shadow Jumpluff there as the final Pokemon into the Shadow Quagsire, the amount of play that you have set up with your Shadow Drapion in the mid-game matchup there gave the edge to the Quagsire, where only 1 Stone Edge was needed to knock out the Jumpluff.
Yeah, as you said, very tough matchup for House Stark. Kind of well done to him for even getting a singular game off of Steps here, right? With that Diggersby, despite being aligned badly. I'm surprised he still brought it in game 2, seeing how hard it was to bring into the Quagsire and Blastoise. Maybe a bit annoyed, maybe was thinking of bringing the Dedenne already game 2, but just couldn't, trust himself to do it with the Quagsire and Cradilly. So we'll have to see how they continue on in this tournament. I'm excited to see Steps with, a slightly more off-meta team with that Blastoise and Tinkaton and see how he does.
Yeah, let's pass it over to Rob and see how the next match goes.
Yep. And hello. Looks like we have 2 Latin battlers facing off now. We have LNDsAureo from Brazil and Thaliwi from Peru, if I'm not mistaken. Some familiar picks that we've seen for a little bit already as well.
Yeah, we have another It's Accent team here on the right from Thaliwi with that Araquanid that I am also a bit of a fan of, but is at the moment Accent's signature pick. And on Areo's side, we have once again that Shadow Quagsire that we saw did so well in that last set.
Those were some impressive Shadow Quagsire plays, and even into Thaliwi's team, it looks pretty solid, hitting once again everything for at least neutral, and having some very solid matchups that you might want to be able to bring it.
Yeah, not only does it hit at least everything for neutral, but it even hits 5 out of these 6 for super effective damage in some way. So Aureo is probably pretty pleased with the way that this Quagsire looks into Thaliwi's team. So we'll have to see what he does and how Thaliwi will play around. Maybe with that Araquanid, because the Araquanid does not look that bad if you look at the side of Aureo's team.
Yeah, I can see good arguments for a couple of picks. I can definitely see the Mandibuzz as well from Aureo. The Dedenne is very hard to bring for Thaliwi, considering Aureo has not only one, but actually 2 ground types, and the Shadow Scizor as well. So I'm curious to see what they actually bring for their very first game and what we're able to watch in any second. It looks like we face off with a Lapras mirror.
Yeah, and this is interesting because Aureo, as you can see, is on the Skull Bash, and Thaliwi is going to be running that Ice Beam. So that means that Aureo is just going to be able to hit so much harder with that Skull Bash in the neutral matchup.
No point in farming up to the Skull Bash here, as it is open team sheets. And we do see the first Skull Bash being thrown by Aureo, which definitely makes you win that matchup for sure. The question is, what do you want to do with your backline? You probably don't care as much about winning the lead if you have a Shadow Scizor that rather wants the energy advantage, but if your Shadow Scizor can avoid something like a Diggersby with this double super effective Fire Punch, that is nice as well.
Yeah, you also want to make sure as Aureo that you have another Sparking area loaded when you come out of this matchup, just to like threaten some damage or even maybe a shield. And I think that is what he's going to do. He's farmed up to the double, and this will definitely knock out Thaliwi's Lapras. And we'll have to see what she does to soak this energy on the Lapras.
That is some excellent counting coming out perfectly with the second Sparkling area, but actually saving it and now swapping into the Shadow Scizor into the Araquanid now. How would you like that as an Araquanid player?
Yeah, because I've played this matchup quite a bit as the Araquanid in GBL, and it looks like that Thaliwi does get the Bug Bite breakpoint. So these Bug Bites are just doing so much, and Aureo is even forced to shield a Bubble Beam just to keep this alive.
Yep. With the Bug Bite breakpoint, that is very solid because you will not get to a third move here, especially after having thrown the Trail Buzz here. So actually no shielding here, hoping that the Bubble Beam will be survived, which it actually does. Throwing the Night Slash here into the
maybe
Araquanid.
Didn't realize that he was at the Trailblaze and settles for the Night Slash instead. But at this point, Night Slash Trailblaze didn't really matter, as you still need a whole entire Stone Edge from this Quagsire to take out the Araquanid.
And you do get to the Stone Edge first, at least into the Araquanid. We'll see if it pulls up the shield. It actually does, which makes sense considering the amount of energy and the ability to either debuff or get the shield back if you throw a Water Pulse. Aureo correctly shielding the Water Pulse here, probably revealing the last Pokemon of Thaliwi pretty soon. We do see a Thronas after some slight overfarm.
Yeah, but just what does Thaliwi need to have in the back? Oh, it's the Dedenne. Maybe this is
That
still
might
playable for Oreo despite this bad looking position, because he does have the Sparkling Aria loaded on that Lapras, right?
You also do throw, yeah, considering with the Sparkling Area, that is just enough what is needed to close that one out. Some great plays by Oreo to
very
close
well
that one
played.
out.
Yeah, the Araquanid was looking so strong, and it looked like it was just going to completely sweep Oreo's team. But maybe he got a bit lucky, or maybe he knew that it was going to be that Dedenne in the back and is therefore able just to take the win there, just barely. Very well played with that, with storing that Sparkling Aria and then swapping into the Sizzle, right? Keeping it for that Dedenne, keeping it just for something where it would actually do some proper damage rather than just doing like 10% to an Araquanid.
What I like especially about Oreo's playstyle is the amount of swaps and switches he makes, preserving energy, trying to get some energy advantage, and really not making sure he needs the perfect alignment, but working with energy is that which makes him such a great battler.
Yeah. So we'll have to see how Thaliwi then adjusts to Oreo's playstyle and just to his picks, right? That Lapras mirror matchup was not what Thaliwi wanted to see, because she is running that Ice Beam. So we'll have to see how then she adjusts and what she leads for this game 2.
And we actually do see the Quacks there now into the Lapras lead. So Thaliwi actually is sticking with the Lapras lead, not hitting the Lapras in the lead this time, but just barely outpacing to the Stone Edge by 1 turn, throwing it immediately 2 turns.
And if we look at the backline of, yeah, nice shield on the Sparkling Aria, and it's going to go for the Aqua Tail bait. I was just about to mention before, if we look at the backline of Oreo, it is going to be stronger into the Araquanid than it was last game. But he does get the Aqua Tail bait as well, so this is really good for Oreo at this point.
Especially now you outpace to the Stone Edge, which is now thrown, so correct shielding it actually on CMP. With Oreo shielding it up again. At this point, Lapras should outpace to the third move, but that gives Oreo the option to actually make a catch and preserve that energy, which he attempts, and he actually does, taking the Sparkling Area on the Shadow Dust Club safe swap.
Yeah, we'll have to see how Thaliwi plays this. Plays with this Quagsire that has so much energy stored. It looks like she just wants to stay in this matchup, and this Dusclops might actually just only get 1 Shadow Punch in this whole game with how quickly it's going down.
That looks like it. I'm surprised to see Oreo overfarming and giving Lapras the option to throw the Sparkling Area, but it would have happened anyway at this point, and he actually gets Psywave down. And especially you don't want to come in Mandibus here, just because of the Ice Beam pressure from Thaliwi here, but we might actually see that.
Yeah, this is really not looking that great for Oreo anymore. Despite making the catch and banking energy on that Quagsire, it's just the Lapras is just doing so much damage. It did actually opt for the Sparkling Area against this Mandibus rather than the super effective Ice Beam, but maybe just recognizing that the Mandibus is useless against the Dedenne anyways.
And considering how strong the Dedenne is into Mandibus, I totally also see getting yourself farmed down. And now we have the Araquanid into the Quagsire. And like a champ, the Araquanid should be able to take 1 Stone Edge pretty easily. Well,
yeah, this is where the Araquanid does. Yeah, well, it's better than the Golisopod, right? The other water and bug type. So that's kind of where the bulk comes in a bit more clutch, as it is able to debuff this Mandibuzz. Not like it was going to do any damage to the Dedenne anyways, but farming up to a lot of energy. We'll have to see whether the Mandibuzz can do anything here.
I do like the plays by Thaliwi and the alignment calls this game, recognizing that the Lapras might still be a good lead and actually hitting a good lead this time, and then aligning the Dedenne where you would love to have it, and this time into the Mandibus, and that helps her close out the game and tying up the series.
Yeah, very well played by Thaliwi. Despite the backline of Aureo being stronger into the Araquanid this game, the Araquanid's still able to do what it has to do, right? Take the Quagsire energy and just set up the Dedenne on that Mandibuzz in the back as she ties up the series 1-1.
I'm curious to see the adjustments. I would love to see something like no Dedenne, maybe, expecting Oreo to double up on or triple down on Dedenne counters, and maybe reading that and making another call about that one. But that may be just me not enjoying the Dedenne Mandibus RPS as much. So I'm curious to see about some adjustments.
Yeah, the thing is, one of the answers to that Dedenne being the Diggersby, I'm not sure whether that Diggersby is really going to be brought here after Thaliwi has been using so much of that Lapras plus Araquanid, right? Yeah. So maybe that's why she feels kind of a bit safer bringing that Dedenne because of how threatened that Diggersby is in this matchup here.
Yeah. We're going to see in any second what those battlers will bring for Game 3. It is going to be the Lapras lead for a third time for Thaliwi, this time into the Shadow Dusclops.
Yeah, Thaliwi just sticking with the Lapras lead, recognizing as long as it's not a Lapras on Oreo's side, her own Lapras is going to be really strong into anything it leads against. Yeah. This is the Shadow version of Dusclops, so it actually does get a lot closer to getting two-shot by these Sparkling Arias than the regular version would.
I do like the adjustment by Oreo, though, not bringing the Mandibus and being stronger against the potential Dedenne in the back if Thaliwi brings it again into the third game here.
Yeah, being stronger into that Dedenne, maybe expecting again, but Thaliwi is going to just grab a shield against this Scizor, but actually stay in, and it's not going to swap out, so maybe doesn't have the Araquanid in the back this time, as Aureo does fire off the Night Slash to take out this Lapras.
Yeah, an Araquanid counter swap would have definitely made sense here, especially before the Shadow Scizor ramped up on even more energy, but it looks like it's actually coming out now. Lowering the trail base here, boosting your own attack, guaranteed.
Yeah, interesting play by Thaliwi there. I would have expected the Araquanid to come in more quickly, but maybe just felt comfortable forcing away some of the Scizor energy, getting a shield, and maybe can match shields now and farm this all the way down. Will come out with a lot of energy on the Araquanid to debuff or to land some water pulses.
Yeah, I'm definitely also curious about the shield here. I think you don't want to necessarily shield that one as an Araquanid, especially on CMP. It looks like we do actually see the Dedenne back on the Quagsire now. This is exactly what Oreo wants here as his last matchup.
Yeah, this is really bad for Thaliwi at this point. That CMP on that Scizor was really not ideal with that Araquanid, as she lost all of her energy that she could gain by farming down. This Quagsire is looking in a good spot to just fire off Aqua Tails against this Dedenne and is doing so much with all that one-shot damage.
Yeah, I'm afraid that small little mouse, as cute as it is, not going to be able to close that one out. But definitely ramping up the defense, which should help. But even if you survive the Stone Edge, I'm not sure whether you'll be able to close that one out.
Yeah, the Stone Edge comes through. The Dedenne survives on 1 HP and swaps out.
Yeah.
This Araquanid is still quite healthy, though. Depending on how much energy it has, might it be able to finish off this Dusclops?
Luckily, the Dusclops still has a shield, which should help it close it out.
Oh, right, it does.
Case. But yeah. There will for sure be a Bubble Beam trying to get the last shield out of the Dusclops. And now if you were able to swap now into Dedenne, that would have been cool, but switch timer is not up yet. So it looks like the Dusclops will be able to close that one out for Oreo. Actually,
Yeah, well played by Oreo. Now, I think the Quagsire is too healthy, will survive
for
a
sure.
Thundershock, and I don't think Detene's at the back-to-back.
It should not be. And yeah, Oreo taking this series here with a very well played game 3 by both battlers. And
Yeah,
the
very
region
well played
LATAM.
by Oreo.
LATAM beating LATAM and exciting LATAM show off.
Yeah, unlucky to Thaliwi. Maybe just made slight miscalculation there on that Scizor energy, right? CMPing with the Araquanid. But well played by Oreo, baiting out the Araquanid with the Scizor and then having that Quagsire in the back aligned to the Dedenne. Probably expecting the same kind of line from Thaliwi once again for the third battle.
Maybe what we can conclude from that is just that Araquanid is not the right Pokemon for this meta, right?
I would completely disagree with you there, but
I think the current NAIC champion might also disagree on that one regarding Araquanid. But let's see.
Well,
I think
yeah,
we're about to head into. I think we're about to head in our 11th match of the day, or my 10th match of the day, which we will see two old butters versus some trainer that we haven't seen in a while battling. I heard he's a South African local.
Yeah, we will be joined by Axon instead.
Yes, and here he is. What did we think about this guy called Steve?
I think that might not be his real name. I feel like he's scamming us this whole time. But either way, PvP Steve versus 2-0 Butters, one of the best casters in North America versus probably the best person in the community who's actually set up Australian streams for the regional circuit. So I'm excited to see both of these battlers fight this battle off and see who can come out on top.
Australian, you said? Is anything about Steve correct that we
Yeah,
even
I don't know,
of?
man. I don't know.
Well, for sure he's going to play some exciting Pokemon. At least we do see some familiar picks again. His Cradily is actually having Acid this time, which does help into certain picks like the Galarian Wheezing, for example, hitting for neutral damage instead of resisted.
Now, it looks like Butter's team is actually very similar to the Zvilas team at NAIC that we saw. It just has the Dusclops over the Corsola. And then PvP Steve running the Ash and Ash team as well. So two very popular teams that we did see at that tournament that both did very well. I believe at this point, we're probably going to see a decent amount of that Golisopod here from Steve, just because that Greninja here is just so hard to take down if you're not using the bug-type damage on that Pokemon.
The Greninja looks really solid into Steve's team, having some very positive matchups into the Diggersby Dusclops and Shadow Sableye especially. The Mandibuzz having Air Slash helps for sure into that matchup, and as you already mentioned, the Golisopod as well, which honestly does look pretty solid into 2-0 Butters team in general.
Yeah, I think it's going to be kind of a neutral match, but I could see some awkward situations where maybe like that Shadow Scizor just gets a big energy lead. It could start running through teams because that Pokemon with that fast move pressure, it can actually fully farm down that Shadow Sableye just with fast moves. You don't need a charge move to knock that thing out. Up any sort of energy, you have play into the Dusclops, you have play into the Diggersby. So I think that it's going to be a battle of the bugs, the Golisopod team versus the Shadow Scizor team. I'll be very excited to see which one of these two trainers comes out on top here in game number 1.
We are just heading to that game. We do see the Diggersby from Steve into the Shadow Dusclops by 2-0 Butters.
We do see that Steve is staying in here because he is a little bit ABA soft to this Dusclops. Diggersby is not the worst matchup in the world, saying Scorching Sands is neutral, but Quick Attack being resisted does not help out a ton, and Ice Punch will be super effective into us here.
It's really unfortunate for Diggersby that 2 Scorching Sands are not enough to take out the Shadow Dusclops, especially if you don't hit the debuff. That makes the matchup just slightly more unfortunate. But Steve actually swapping out into his Bug type that we already mentioned will probably be coming, which is not the matchup I would necessarily want it, but getting an energy advantage on this Pokemon might be a play.
One thing that we're seeing here is Fury Cutter into the Shadow Dusclops is actually doing 2 damage per turn. So while this matchup isn't necessarily great, you do have a bit more play into this one than the regular Dusclops, I might say. But we do see the chip and dip from that Dusclops get a shield, get a lot of damage into the Golisopod, and then Lapras is going to be a decent way to soak this energy. At this point, Psywave is not going to be able to Psywave down super quickly, but because we are able to... Oh, we're actually a Shadow Lapras. I didn't even realize that.
Yep.
That is crazy. That's going to do just a bit more damage back and forth here in this scenario.
Shadow Lapras not being able to take both of these X scissors, but actually shielding up and using all that energy, which makes Steve swap into his Cradily, and the Shadow Lapras actually having Skull Bash is better for the Cradily because you're not threatened by the Ice Beam as much.
Yeah, you might not get one-shot by a charge move, but these two Sparkling Arias, even after an attack drop here with this Rock Tomb, should still be able to put in quite a bit of work. We do see that shield, because at this point, you do want Lapras still around. It's not bad into Golisopod. It's not bad, potentially, into that Diggersby in the backline, too. So if you keep your Lapras around, it might still get some work done this game. Sparkling comes through. Is this Psywave downrange, or do we see a swap out to the Shadow Galarian Weezing?
Just the perfect farm down for 2 Butters. This looks quite rough for Steve. How is he gonna soak up all the energy? We do see the Diggersby that has Scorching Sands to one-shot the Galarian Weezing at least, but not before Galarian Weezing gets off to at least one charge move.
Now, unfortunately, this is not going to be an Overheat Weezing. Brutal Swing will not be able to one-shot here, but the amount of energy you have might allow you to reach a second move here against the Diggersby. A bit of an overfarm by Steve, meaning now this is going to be a CMP on the Scorching Sands. Brutal Swing comes through, it gets the shield, but the Scorching Sands will likely knock out this Poison-type Pokemon.
Let's see how close that matchup will still be. For sure, the Galarian Weezing will go down at this point. We do know that Lapras does not have as much energy left, if I'm not mistaken. But the Dusclops is coming back, and we're exactly in the elite matchup again.
Go for a Fire Punch here, which is not quite enough damage to knock out. I think Butters might have, or Steve rather, might be worried that Butters is going to go for an Ice Punch into him and snipe him down here, which it was a smart play. You can see the Ice Punch thrown right after the fact, which means at this point, if you can Fury Cutter this down, and then potentially go for a charge move into that Lapras, then you might still be able to win this game as a Golisopod. It's going to be close, a fast move, pressure down race, stab Fury Cutters, able to farm down. You have a charge move loaded for the Dusclops. It looks like Steve might be winning game number 1 against 2 Butters.
Very, very close game. Just the perfect farm down that he got from the Lapras. And some very, very, very close and well-played game from both battlers in our first game here.
Yeah, I think having that Fury Cutter damage against the Shadow Dusclops is so huge here for Steve, because honestly, it's already a very good Pokemon into Butters' team. The only Pokemon you really don't want to see as the Golisopod now would probably be that Galarian Weezing, just because they actually do very much so resist your Bug-type damage, being a Fairy and Poison-type Pokemon. But at this point, if you avoid that matchup, Steve is in a very good spot. At this point, too, we have seen what both trainers are trying to do. That Dusclops on the side of Butters was putting in a lot of work against the team of Steve, but we also saw the Shadow Lapras, which potentially put in a lot of work if it wasn't lined up into the Golisopod there at the end game. If it was able to get that farm down instead, that could have been very close, but it was just barely not able to do what it needed to.
Excellent. Well said, and perfectly. And I'm curious to see how Butters is going to adapt into the second game. For sure, that Golisopod is going to be very strong again. And as you mentioned in the first talk, we might be able to see the Shadow Scissor now, which might be cool.
Yeah, a bit surprised that didn't come. I think that was one of Butters' best Pokemon here. If he leans into that, there's a good chance he can get the amount of pressure that the Golisopod was able to get against him. Maybe he can use his own bug type and kind of do the same thing against Steve's team.
We are about to see it as we're heading to game 2 and see if the Shadow Scissors is coming out. For sure, and here's the matchup you talked about. We do have the Golisopod into the Shadow Weezing here, and these Fury Cutters do nothing.
And it's not just the Fury Cutter damage that's kind of laughable. The fact that you get outpaced by these sludges from this Weezing makes it so the longer this goes on, the less good it gets. Although we do see a no-shield here by Butters, which means, honestly, Golisopod, while it's not doing great in this matchup, if you do play at the zero shield, at least you chip this Pokemon down a little bit. Sludge, though, is probably going to come through, and nearly one-shot us. Or Brutal Swing, bait. We survived that a lot easier. All right, this might give Steve the option to potentially shield, maybe try to catch the next move if he wants to.
You can for sure also get a shield back or win the lead, depending on what he wants to do. We do see a Aqua Jet catch on the Lapras. Some great plays by Butters, getting rid of the energy. But now we do see the Cradily counter swap into the Lapras, which is honestly, you didn't really need that Aqua Jet energy, of course, into the Lapras.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a waste of energy there. And the worst thing about this is, as we saw in that first game, 2 Sparkling Arias still do quite a bit. You're not on Ice Beam here, but it still gets a shield. On that first attack, you're down 2 shields as the Cradily, because if you don't knock this Pokemon out here and now, it can start running through your team. What an undercharge, though, by Steve, realizing that if this does go through, you might as well get a bit of extra energy. What a tactical and precise play by Mr. PvP Steve.
Would have maybe some slight... Okay, I'm going to be very... I agree that it was a great play. I would just love to see a little bit more just to outpace the Galarian Weezing, but who am I to judge? That was some awesome play by Steve.
At this point, you got to give him props for doing that. I don't know my Shadow Lapras undercharges here, so the fact he was able to do that at all is very impressive. And, okay, in the backline is once again the Shadow Dusclops. Do we get a Rock Tomb off? We do. Butters goes for the CMP, but Cradily is able to win it here. This means this Dusclops is going to be permanently debuffed. Does this change how the matchup is going to play out? And that move lands. That is the hardest hitting move, unless maybe the Golisopod could have reached an attack that this Dusclops could have taken in the remainder of this game.
Yeah, not sure what Butters was expecting in the back, but for sure this is looking pretty rough for him now, because you probably need for sure 3, if not 4 Ice Punches now due to the debuff, and I'm just not sure whether you'll be able to close that one out.
Yeah, and the tricky thing is Golisopod is still around in the backline. It's healthy enough that the Fury Cutters are going to get some real fast pressure against you. So honestly, Steve might be able to go straight Fire Punch here. Even if he called a move, then the fast pressure might just be too much for this Dusclops. Fire Punch is going to be thrown, and likely will get his shield here. Do we see a call of the bait? No. Butters at this point realizes he has to shield something. Unfortunately for him, it's going to be a Fire Punch. He knows this is another Fire Punch, though. We might see a no shield on this attack.
Yeah, but even if we see a no shield here, the Shadow Caesar just has so much fast move pressure. As you see, the Fury Cut is doing so much damage, and now it should be in quick attack downrange.
Yeah, this is just so tragic here for the Dusclops. You're both doing no fast pressure back and forth, but at this point, the Golisopod did just enough to put you into quick attack downrange. You don't see that too often, but the normal type, quick attacking down the ghost type Pokemon. Steve able to take a 2-0 victory over 2-0 Butters. Once again, the North American casters not quite pulling it out here, but well played by Steve. Incredible use of that Golisopod.
Yeah, definitely some very great plays by Steve, especially that undercharge that actually saved him so much in that second game in hindsight, especially not getting off the last rock throw into the Dusclops on the CMP tie.
Yeah, if Butters didn't overfarm there, then it would have been a very awkward situation for Steve. But because Steve was able to get that energy from undercharging, he was able to capitalize on Butters' mistake. And while there was a mistake by Butters, it was also very well played by Steve to set himself up for that win condition where, I mean, it might not have been as much in his control in the end game whether or not Butters threw after 3 or 4. But because Butters did throw on 4, he was able to CMP that Rock Tomb, get a ton of damage off, and permanently debuff the rest of that Dusclops for the rest of the game. That set up a very close endgame matchup, but he was able to Fury Cutter and quick attack down that Dusclops in the endgame. Very cool stuff to see from our host, Steve, here in that battle.
Especially because we haven't seen Steve losing yet. He might be the trainer that can go 5-0 to win the title Clash of the Casters for Oceania, or should I say South Africa?
You know, you're not wrong. Maybe he set this whole thing up just so he could win his own tournament. I think, honestly, that might be what's going down right now. We'll have to see in future rounds if that's going to be the case. But we'll be joined here by MEweedle in just a second for our next matchup.
Yep.
Or the forecasters, actually. Wait, hold on. Change of plans, chat. There's going to be all of us right now.
with
Wait a
Steve
minute.
and Weedle.
Just breaking news, I suppose, in the grand scheme of things, because obviously, as the guy who set up this tournament, I just wanted to be grateful. I want to be humble, I just made sure that I didn't win the tournament. So I lost some other rounds instead. But that isn't what I've come here to drop. What I've instead come here to say is earlier on in this broadcast, at the beginning of the stream, I said that, today it was going to be a bit of a showcase round, right? We were going to sort of show off as many casters as we can, and then next week would really start to get towards the finals, the guys performing at the very top. What if I told you I was being a little bit dishonest? And I know what you're saying already. I mean, are you kidding? You would never be dishonest with us, Josh. I mean, Steve. There's no way that I would ever do something like that. And so if I turn our attention to the sort of, I guess, order of battles that we're going to be seeing for the rest of the day, we just saw the first 10 matches of the day. But if we look at 11, 12, 13, and 14, the last 4 matches that we're going to be seeing here today, these are the 8 battlers that went 2-0 in the first 2 rounds of the tournament. And so this is actually going to be the sort of, I guess, single elim version of the round 3. These are the 8 battlers that are still in it to win it. Everyone we've seen so far, some of them are doing incredibly well, mind you, regardless throughout the rest of this tournament. But I guess that was sort of the showcase rounds. We're now getting serious. The next 4 matches are need to win matches to get all the way to the top with that $100 USD prize as well. So it's going to be pretty interesting to watch here with DrTrotter versus Stumpy, OCE versus OCE. We've got Ice Chris versus ArceusAurelius, LATAM versus EU, Speediest Chief versus Rosha Babyface in NA versus LATAM, and NiteTimeClasher versus sophtoph in that 4th battle as well. So we've got 2 LATAM, 1 EU remaining, 2 OCE, and then 3 North American by the looks of it. So some high battles to go, but it means the stakes are officially on. It's go time. But with that interlude underway, we can get back into the action, throwing it back to It's Axon and MEweedle for the, I guess, first match of the, what is almost, I guess, the finals of the day, to sort of progress on to next week's broadcast into round number 4. And that is going to be starting with some Aussie action, seeing as we just had some South African action on stream. We've had with DrTrotter versus Stumpy, 25-17.
All right, yeah, I guess that is a bit of a bombshell to drop on us right now. This is going to be for all the marbles here. Do you want to make it to day number 2 in this tournament? You have to win this match, DrTrotter versus Stumpy. And the first thing that we see as a standout is both of these trainers have a Pokemon we haven't seen throughout this entire tournament. They both have the Fortress. What do you think about this pick, Weedle?
Yeah, maybe they team built together, given that they both are fellow Oceanian casters. But with the newly buffed bug bite, people originally, I believe, thought when the new season dropped that Fortress might be something to look out for. However, just the pressure of Fire Punch, Diggersby, and the ghost types resisting the bug bite has kind of scared it away a bit, and it didn't perform as well as some people might have liked or thought at NAIC. However, clearly they are both currently undefeated before this match. So it's clearly, doing some stuff for them. So we'll have to see how it does into something like the Credilli, or it resists the bullet punch from the Sizzle, one of the few things that can deal with that pretty well.
Can we talk about how DrTrotter has 2 Shadow, Steel, and Bug-type Pokemon on his team? That is kind of psychotic here that he has that. Luckily, he's the one with the Talonflame. It's not going to be as bad for him. Honestly, his 2 Steel Bugs look almost free into Stumpy's team. He safe swapped the Shadow Fortress. What can shut that down? I'm not sure. I guess maybe Diggersby, but then Shadow Caesar in the backline could also just put in some work. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot of that here from DrTrotter. Pangoro as a pick from Stumpy, a very unique Pokemon, has a lot of play neutrally into the team of DrTrotter. Not a lot of specific targets, though, and that Dene could be kind of a reason not to want to bring the fighting and dark-type Pokemon.
Yeah, however, if you do bring the Dene from DrTrotter, you kind of it's kind of scary to pair it with the Bug Steel types because of that Diggersby, right? The Diggersby having the Fire Punch against the Bug Steel types and the super effective Scorching Sands against the Dene. So if he is looking to bring the Dene, he might have to pair it with something more like the Credilli or the Talonflame. The Talonflame not even looking that bad into Stumpy's team as long as it avoids that Shadow Feraligatr.
I could see Shadow Gator being brought here just because Cradilli, as we know now, is actually, hold on, this Cradilli is running Bullet Seed, never mind. So I guess it has a bit more fast food pressure into the Gator. It's still not the worst matchup though, saying you have Ice Beam, Hydro Cannons add up quite a bit over time as well. So I could see the Shadow Gator being brought as a way to try to at least slow down the Steel types a little bit. At least Shadow Caesar, you technically resist the fast food pressure there. Shadow Fortress, so I'm sure that kind of just shreds through you with Bug Bites. So I mean, if you want to try to counteract the Talonflame, Gator could be brought. But in general, I'd say this matchup might be a little bit tricky for Stumpy, trying to deal with these two Bug and Steel-type Pokemon, but there are ways for him around them.
Yeah, we'll have to see how they decide to, play around the different scary things on both teams, the Feraligatr and the Fortress, as we will shortly go into game number 1.
Talonflame as our lead into Shadow Drapion. A pretty good matchup for Drapion, but it's not unplayable here for the Talonflame either. You can go and win the 0s and 1s as the Fire-type bird here, but because you're so spammy as this Shadow Drapion, you can just outpace. You can start spamming out these Aqua Tails here against this Talonflame.
Yeah, the Aqua Tails are going to do a lot of damage, easily 2-shot, but this Fly is going to be doing even more if it goes unshielded. DrTrotter may just swap out into the Fortress if this Fly gets shielded here, as the Bug Bite would do a lot. Nope, just decides to stay in, force the Drapion to throw all its energy, might decide to let this one go.
I don't hate this play at this point. You've set up a shield advantage for your Shadow Fortress. It's a shame you don't have a Shadow Caesar, because Shadow Caesar at this point would just shield once, farm down, and probably just sweep through the whole team. But because Shadow Fortress is still very strong, you can probably go for the no shield because you're a little bit bulkier. Farm this all the way down. Crunch coming through honestly does do quite a bit of damage here, but Drapion's out of the way as long as there isn't going to be either the opposing Fortress or potentially that Pangoro in the backline. Cradilli's going to have a lot of play.
That's a really nice catch as well by DrTrotter, catching the Fire Punch and sneaking the Bullet Seed through at the same time. Has now got so much energy banked on the Fortress and a very healthy Cradilli. What's Stumpy going to do if he doesn't have the Fortress here? This Cradilli might look to do very well in the back.
It's surprising to me that he's staying in. That implies, well, I mean, at this point, we know it's going to be a Diggersby or potentially a, or Diggersby's right here, a Jumpluff or a Feraligatr in the back line for our trainer on the right. I think Stumpy at this point is in a tricky spot. He's kind of core broken by this Pokemon. He's trying to whittle it down, but Rock Tomb being thrown, I'm not sure if this is quite enough to knock out. It might be, but either way, Cradilli has shut down Diggersby and hopefully opened up that Shadow Fortress once again.
Yeah, it is indeed that Shadow Feraligatr, and I think DrTrotter is in a very good position here. Likely going to shield this up and can just grab the final shield with a Rock Tomb from the Cradilli, and then the Rock Tomb from the Shadow Fortress is going to do a lot. Actually just goes for the Grass Knot here. That works too. Maybe I'm expecting Stumpy to call a Rock Tomb here, but does get the shield and is trying to swap. Catches instead.
I don't think that's going to matter. I think you still get to a move on Cradilli, but that was a little bit odd there to see. If this Feraligatr is able to reach a move, then that could be bad, but no, Cradilli is, with, I think specifically Bullet Seed, actually able to outpace because of that. Bullet Seed energy generation just slightly quicker here than the Feraligatr. Grass Knot lands, knocks out the Feraligatr. And I mean, Shadow Fortress didn't have a lot of wiggle room in the background, but Cradilli, it really popped off once they got rid of that Shadow Drapion.
Yeah, the Shadow Drapion being gone, the Cradilli is then free. Stumpy may be looking to adjust then to make sure that he's covered that Cradilli a bit better than he has this game. But probably just scared to bring, that Fortress with the Talonflame on DrTrotter's team. Scared to bring the Pangoro with the Dedenne and the Talonflame still on the team of DrTrotter again. So might have to make a hard read here to try and catch that Cradilli on the right thing.
I am pretty surprised we didn't actually see that Shadow Caesar in game number 1. It feels like a Pokemon that into this team of Stumpies, like every matchup, it just feels pretty decent into. You didn't see the Fortress here in the first game. Maybe that was one of the matchups you were more scared about because the Bug Bites do add up quite a bit against you. But now that you didn't see that Pokemon, I mean, Diggersby might have Fire Punch, but it has no fast food pressure into you. You can just farm that Pokemon down with Trailblaze if you get any sort of an energy lead. And against the rest of the team, it has a lot of play as well. I wouldn't be surprised to see that Shadow Caesar come through in the next match. Stumpy might need to make a risky call and maybe bring that Fortress despite seeing that Talonflame, because if you don't have your own Fortress, that Cradilly could potentially put in even more work into you in the next match.
Yeah, we'll have to see what Stumpy decides to do, whether he does bring that Fortress as they lead Gastrodon into the Drapion in Game 2. That is a really good lead for DrTrotter.
It's looking like he might have just expected a run back here or something, just the complete RPS lineup. I was expecting an instant Dedenne counter swap into Shadow Gator, although the thing is, up energy, Gator is actually always able to outpace the Hydro Cannons. Maybe you want to get his shield first from this Pokemon, but the longer you stay in here, the more advantage that you're giving over to this Feraligatr, the more that it's not getting RPS by a Dedenne, and it could be a little bit awkward here now that you've chipped down that Gastrodon into a range where Drapion might be able to go for Crunch plus an Aqua Tail to knock you out.
Yeah, so Stumpy may be making the right read with that for Alligator safe swap. The Hydro Cannon does so much to the Dedenne. If DrTrotter does too many Thundershocks before buffing his defense, he might actually get in Shadow Claw downrange if he... Okay, Stumpy does decide to let it go, but I think the Poison Stings will do enough before DrTrotter gets to another Parabolic Charge. And as you said, this might be getting close to 2 moves from the Shadow Drapion at this point.
Yeah, Crunch is going to come through. This is obviously not going to one-shot from this range, but now they're going to be in Aqua Tail range. In the back line, no, is the Fortress. This could be a little bit awkward, saying there's a Fire and Flying type Pokemon that could potentially put in some work here. But Earth Power being thrown to try to chip down this Pokemon. The one saving grace is Rock Tomb is a move that you have on this pick. Can you reach it? You cannot. You get farmed down, and this is not looking great now for the Shadow Drapion.
Yeah, DrTrotter just perfectly read Stumpy's line, and it's just completely over. He's got the 2 fly loaded. Yeah, and the Drapion's basically dead already. So this fly is just going to do the tiny amount of damage that he needs to do, and he will win the series 2-0.
If that Rock Tomb was reached, there's a chance maybe Aqua Tail could have knocked out Talon from that range. It would have been close. But if you could have knocked out the Talon, then somehow got an Aqua Tail against Gastro, you might have been able to flip that really bad RPS situation. Unfortunately, though, for Stumpy, just did not get the right alignment there in that game. DrTrotter, though, playing very well with the unique team, the double Shadow Bug Steel type Pokemon. I don't think I was expecting that at all at this tournament. But here it is, making it into the day 2 of this event. 3-0 record here for DrTrotter. Very impressive stuff.
Yeah, very well played by him. Yeah, that's perfect line call. I mean, just in Game 2, bringing the Gastrodon, bringing the Talonflame, onto the Fortress. That Shadow Feraligatr was a bit of a tough safe swap, but he had a good game plan against it and was then easily able to remove it off the battlefield and quickly realign his other Pokemon correctly.
Yeah, his Shadow Feraligatr played expertly in that game, able to use the energy lead to full force. Even Dedenne didn't want to take a Hydro Cannon there. And at this point, we have our first trainer moving on to day number 2. We'll be seeing the next trainer that might potentially make it here in the next battle. I believe Rob will be joining us here in just a second, and I'll be excited to see who makes it on.
Yep, and here I am, and we have me and MEweedle coaching now our last European battler, actually undefeated, which will be ArceusAurelius playing the Unnovan Stunfisk.
Yeah, the Unnovan Stunfisk is an interesting pick in this meta because we have seen a lot of Diggersby, and the Dusclops having Ice Punch is also not the greatest for it. If we look on the side of Ice Chris, that Unnovan Stunfisk does hit the Moltres and Azumarill for super effective, as well as the Drapion, but it just struggles against some other stuff like the Cradilly and Shadow Quagsire.
Unova Stunfisk into Shadow Quagsire is really one of those matchups that I love to avoid just in general. I'm curious to see what ArceusAurelius is going to bring. The Shadow Dusclops on the other side looks a bit tough to bring into 2 dark types brought by Ice Chris, for example.
Yeah, maybe Icecrest then reading that the Dusclops won't come and therefore making the Annihilate easier for himself to bring in this matchup, as it does look pretty solid into everything that isn't Dusclops. So maybe Icecrest is going to lean into that, as well as potentially the Azumarill, depending on the moveset of this Lapras. It is indeed an Ice Beam Lapras, so actually resisting all of the Lapras moves, resisting all of Drapion's charge moves, resisting all of Arachnide's moves. The Azumarill may be a very good sponge for him in this matchup.
The Ice Beam on the Lapras makes the Moltres matchup way better, which nearly knocks out the Galarian Moltres, but having the Psy-Wave damage then, trying to farm down the Galarian Moltres might be just tough in general on the other side.
Yeah, we'll have to see what they decide to run as we are going to get into this game one. And it is the Shadow Drapion from Icecrest into ArceusAurelius, regular Annihilate.
That's an interesting matchup for sure. Annihilate always tanks one move here, which we're about to see. We actually do see a shield, and that pivot into the Azumarill, which looks like a solid safe swap into ArceusAurelius team in general.
Yeah, the Azumarill, after grabbing a shield, is just going to soak this Annihilate energy. ArceusAurelius kind of in a bit of a difficult spot, probably doesn't really know how to play around this Azumarill, so just is going to farm back up the energy that it used against it and swap into the Lapras. The Lapras does resist the bubbles and does have neutral fast move pressure with that Psy-Wave.
Yeah, interesting to throw the Rage Fist here, considering that you're down a shield and then you swapped out, but now you set up the Lapras at least, which should tank 2 play rev, and will be able to get a solid amount of energy, which will be useful into the Shadow Drapion. We might see a swap back from Icecrest, though, in any second, maybe after a charge move thrown by ArceusAurelius.
Yeah, maybe ArceusAurelius is looking less to kind of keep switch with the Lapras, but more just to set back up the Annihilate to get like a big farm down here. Because if he lets this play rough go, I think Icecrest will be forced to swap out. Otherwise, this Annihilate will just completely farm down the Azumarill.
Yeah. Looks like we do see the swap into Drapion and then a swap into the Annihilate back. So now we do see the Annihilate probably boosting itself up. So might be able to pretty much counter down afterwards, but luckily for Icecrest, the Quagsire is also quite spammy, which should make that matchup quite close given the energy advantage.
Yeah, the shield advantage here is really nice for the Quagsire, as it means that the Annihilate won't be able to completely farm this down, and he will get to this Aquatail to take out the Quagsire. Nice slight overfarm there, recognizing that ArceusAurelius would likely CMP the Quagsire, is now maybe in a position to reach an Aquatail against this Drapion, which is going to do a lot of damage.
Or just forcing Ostrich to throw one Poison Sting earlier. That looks like you are shielding the Quagsire just to get off the Aquatail damage, and chip ArceusAurelius Shadow Drapion down, which now has to beat all 3 Pokemon. But this looks tough because Icecrest Drapion is not in Aquatail range, and ArceusAurelius recognizes that and decides to not throw the move here.
Yeah, very well played by Icecrest, using that Azumarill as a very effective safe swap after getting a shield advantage so early in the game, right, with the first crunch that was thrown. And that just put ArceusAurelius in such a tough spot, right? He didn't know what to do with that Annihilate, how to, effectively play against that Azumarill safe swap. So it just put him in a tough spot, and the Quagsire was then able to clean up.
I love how you pointed out the potential Azumarill safe swap that Arceus really has to find out how to deal with it. We might be able to see the Arachnidae coming out to tank the Azumarill energy. On the other hand, you know that matchup probably way better than I do.
Yeah, the Arachnidae being able to tank the play roughs and the bubbles a lot better after spamming out a few bubble beams. The problem just with the Arachnid in this matchup is that Annihilate on Ice side is still quite threatening. Unless Ice knows that he loses CMP somehow to ArceusAurelius Annihilate, although I doubt he would know that immediately. But the Arachnid just, tough to bring because of the pressure that Ice has in this matchup. So we'll have to see how ArceusAurelius adjusts to that Azumarill safe swap. Maybe he will try to bring that Ufisk, but it is just going to be the Annihilate lead from him into Ice Moltres.
That's an interesting matchup. Of course, you want to shield the flies as the Annihilate and those sucker punches for short chunk. But also, no shielding the Ice Punch. Knowing you survived the move and just being happy with the shield advantage here might be the play.
Yeah, maybe looking to do a similar play as he did in game 1, where he just gets a shield advantage in the lead and now swaps out into kind of a safe swap. And once again, I think ArceusAurelius is kind of stuck and doesn't really know what to do. So he is just going to grab a shield here, maybe look to swap out, but we'll have to see.
I do like grabbing the shield here, but I'm surprised to see a Stunfisk counter swap actually. So Ice going for the bait here. Yeah, Ice Punch would have been super effective, but also you want to ramp up those counter damage. So let's see if it pays off. The Annihilate for sure still is in 2 charge move range, and 1 charge move is not even close to knocking it out.
Yeah, maybe with the boost from the first Rage Fist, this Ice Punch will actually now come close to knocking it out. Does just fire it off instantly. Does he get the counter down? No, he doesn't think he will get it, but I think he would have got it. So now he's just giving free energy to something that Marcus can bring in.
Yeah, interesting to swap out. I'm curious to hear what was the play behind that one, especially because it's hard to either counter or merge it down the Annihilate on ArceusAurelius. So it looks like you're going back into the Annihilate. And it looks like you are about to shield the Rage Fist as well, thinking you might be able to counter it down. No, we see a swap into Lapras.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty good spot for ArceusAurelius because he has the shield advantage here against this Quagsire. And even though these counters have done so much, the Mudshots just won't be doing the damage they need to do. And with so much energy on the Lapras, I think it might be able to just two-shot this Quagsire.
That looks very rough for Ice at this point, even after the quite positive lead. But at this point, it looks like ArceusAurelius is about to throw the last charge move to tie up the series 1-1.
Yeah, well played by ArceusAurelius. Getting that farm down there on that Moltres with the Annihilate was really important, as it still was just not in fast move down range for anything on Ice side. So that kind of just put him in a difficult spot. Maybe the slight miscount on that Unova Stunfisk is kind of what cost him the game a bit. But we'll have to see how he adjusts to that then in the next game. Not bringing the Azumarill this time, maybe expecting the Unova Stunfisk to come and trying to kind of catch that out a bit.
I'm surprised to not see the Azumarill in general, because even against the Unova Stunfisk, you can hit back with the Ice Beam at least. But we'll see whether Ice might go back to the Azumarill in any moment when we're about to hit into Game 3. We just saw Drapion into a Shadow Annihilate as our lead matchup, and no Azumarill being back.
Yeah, this is not the best for Ice because because it is that regular Annihilate, just the count, you have hardly any fast move pressure into it. So this Annihilate is just going to be looking so strong here. Although with that shield advantage, he will now be able to outpace ArceusAurelius Annihilate in this matchup.
So some adjustment from ArceusAurelius, bringing the Shadow Dust Club now, expecting the Annihilate again. At this point, you should still be able to tank the Rage Fist, and you're for sure not shielding it, because the next one will be doing more.
Yeah, that's a really good call from ArceusAurelius, recognizing that Ice Chris might lean into that Annihilate again, but the Rage Fist still do so much damage, and with the energy lead that Arceus gave this Annihilate, he will be able to fire off this Rage Fist and potentially swap out now.
Yep. So this is some great misalignment, using the misalignment of the switch timer by Ice Chris to soak the energy on the Drapion, keeping the Annihilate safe, and we do see Arceus swapping back into his own Annihilate to catch the move. That is an interesting play. But yeah,
Yeah, it
looks
is.
like
This is now very close into Mudshot range now.
Somewhat a similar situation to the end of the last game, where the Annihilate was still doing a lot of damage into the opposing team because it's hard to farm it down. We'll see how Ice Chris is playing that one out. Looks like he is about to shut it down. And if there's a Lapras in the back again for ArceusAurelius, it looks way better for him than in the previous game.
Yeah, we'll have to see, because I believe that Dusclops still has energy as well, but it wasn't quite at the move. So Ice Chris is able to take this out. And now he has a low Quagsire with some energy and kind of semi-healthy Annihilate, but with no energy. Is he able to reach the Stone Edge? I think he will be.
Looks like he's saving the move first, though, knowing he will win CMP, I assume.
Yeah, making sure to get in some counter damage before later coming back in with the Quagsire. He's going to land this Stone Edge, but just how much damage does this do? I'm not sure it's enough to take it out.
Well, we're going to see how tanky that Lapras is. This will be so close. And it looks like it's just enough for Ice Chris to close out that game. That was so close and well played by both sides.
Wow. Yeah, that was an incredible final game. I mean, yeah, I'm surprised Ice Chris was able to come back from that. It looked kind of over already as soon as he got that Annihilate lined up onto that Shadow Dusclops. The good call from ArceusAurelius just didn't work out somehow still. Ice Chris playing very well, getting down all the shields and then landing a Stone Edge with his Quagsire to win that game.
That unfortunately also means that the last undefeated European battlers from the second round is now out, and LATAM joins Oceania as the people that are undefeated 3-0.
Yeah. So we have, I believe, 2 more battlers who are potentially going to make it to the kind of top 4, and we will have Axon joining us then for the next one.
Yeah, which will be Speediest Chief versus Rocha Babyface. Peyton joining me for this one. Welcome back. How do you like those teams?
Thank you, man. I'm very excited to see that Speedy looks like he's running this Violet's team once again. Rocha running. If that isn't the Ash and Ash team, it's very close. I think it is the same team as Ash and Ash. You've seen a very similar matchup earlier on in this tournament. And just a little bit of lore here. It looks like Speediest Chief had to beat Tomahawk and DeFi to get here, and Rocha beat Omar and Rise to get to this position in the tournament. So Rocha had to take down some pretty heavy-hitting names. Speedy as well. A very tough path to getting here. So 2 great battlers, 2 great teams, and I'll be interested to see which one can kind of dance around just a little bit more.
Yeah, these teams do look very interesting. We do see once again the 2 bug types facing against each other. We have the Shadow Caesar on Speediest Chief sides and the Golisopod on Rocha Babyface side. We do have different ghost types with the Corsola on Speediest side and the Shadow Saber with the Power Gem again on Rocha's side. Overall, I'm excited to see some interesting battles.
Yeah, I think it was the Butters versus PvP Steve matchup that was kind of similar to this, where Golisopod had a lot of play into the team, the Xylis team, basically. Although Corsola here, rather than the Shadow Dusclops, is probably going to be a bit better at shutting down Golisopod, at least not taking as much fast move pressure. But I think I've looked into it. It's actually not as great in the 2-shield matchup as you might expect for Galarian Corsola. So once again, going to see a lot of Golisopod here, and I would expect Speedy to use Shadow Caesar. Let's see if in game number 1 these predictions are correct.
Yeah, let's see whether Rocha is able to handle the Caesar, able to navigate the Caesar as great as PvP, Steve. We do see him leading it into Speedy's Lapras in the lead, which is
Golisopod into Lapras is very neutral.
Yeah. It is good for Lapras that it has Skullbush here, so it makes sense to shield the first move, because then you're not in a range of being knocked out by the first, by the Fury Cutters after one of those moves.
The big question is always, do they go for a bait, or do they full send the Skull Bash here? And you see Speedy does full send the Skull Bash, guarantees that shield, as well as guaranteeing that defense increase on his own Lapras here. And by getting that defense increase, you can survive this next Exeter pretty easily, get a Sparkling Aria off, it looks like, and hopefully now this Lapras is going to whittle this down enough that Shadow Caesar in the backline will have a decent amount of play, as well as that Greninja, which once this Bug-type Pokemon is gone, is going to be pretty tricky for Rocha to deal with.
Looks like Speedy's Chief CMP'd the Sparkling Area to make sure he gets off one move before the Golisopod throws the second X-Scissor, which it does at this point. But now it's in perfect farm down range for either of Speedy's Chief's Pokemon. It looks like it's going to be the Greninja opting to go for 2 Water Shurikens, which is a perfect farm down here.
A little surprised to see the Greninja farm down rather than the Shadow Caesar. That's a decent amount of fast move pressure we just took from the Fury Cutters. Either way, the energy lead here is always going to be helpful. 2 Hydro Cannons, not quite enough to 2-shot a Mandibuzz from full HP, but after the Water Shurikens, it might just be enough. Dusclops on Roach's side gets to avoid this Pokemon, which walls all of its energy, but Shadow Caesar in the backline still does have some play into the Ghost type with the Night Slash that it has access to as well.
We now need some good energy management from Roach's side, making sure he gets off a move against the Scizor as well, because if the Mandibuzz gets off a move against the Scizor, it is way more manageable for the Dusclops especially. And it looks like this is exactly what's going to happen, forcing Speedy's Chief to either take the full Dark Pulse or Foul Play, and looks like that has just happened actually. It is a Foul Play.
It's a heads-up no-shield there. There's a lot of moves on the side of Rocha that could one-shot a Shadow Caesar. Foul Play is not quite enough. But with that said, this Dusclops is still pretty healthy, and you need to be able to bullet punch not only this Pokemon down, but also the rest of that Mandibuzz in the backline. Greninja is extremely low on HP. You survive a Night Slash as this Dusclops, so I don't know if we have enough in the bank to win this game. Night Slash is going to come through here in just a second, but no, actually going to try to farm down because that is your win condition. Shadow Punch should snipe down the rest of the Shadow Caesar, and it looks like Rocha will be taking the win here in the first game.
If you ever needed at least one Night Slash booster too, you might be familiar with that, then that was the point. But it looks like it did not happen for Speedy's Chief on that one.
Yeah, very well played by both battlers there. I think, honestly, if Speedy went for the single bullet punch energy lead on Shadow Caesar, rather than taking all the Fury Cutters on his Greninja, that might have been a little bit better for him, because he doesn't really need an energy lead with Greninja to beat a lot, but an energy lead on Shadow Caesar can really make the Dusclops matchup hard. It can make the Mandibuzz matchup, you can just go Trailblaze and get a lot of bullet punch damage into them as well. So I feel like maybe what Speedy might realize is, as long as that Golisopod's out of the way, save the HP on your Greninja and get the energy lead on that Shadow Caesar, and you should be in a pretty good spot to sweep the backline, whatever they might have.
I like that, especially because it might also be the Mandibuzz being aligned on the Shadow Caesar, and then having the Greninja on the opposing Dusclops is what you actually would even prefer to see it and not on the Mandibuzz.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, if these trainers want to run similar teams here, I think that might be the adjustment Speedy goes for. With that said, there are a lot of options for them to go for here as well in the next game. Speedy could play it safe. He could lead a Pokemon like his Shadow Caesar, a Pokemon that against most of the things on Roach's team, it can win switch against. And then maybe he could have a bit more of an alignment-dependent backline if he wants to play it out that way. Rocha might know at this point that Golisopod is a pretty safe Pokemon. Maybe just stick it in the lead once again, knowing that as long as you're avoiding either the Corsola or that Shadow Caesar, you should have a pretty consistent matchup against whatever you see. But it's always going to come down to the placement of that Greninja on Speedy's side. Let's see if in game number 2, they can make the right reads, and we see instantly a Weezing into a Dusclops.
Not what I expected in melee, but looks like the Galarian Weezing is about to throw its first brutal swing already. The most insane pacing that we currently have in the meta. Every 8 turns, Galarian Weezing can throw a move. We actually do see a catch as well of the Shadow Punch on the Greninja, which is an insane catch.
Like it's a good catch in the moment, but it's a bad catch if you think about it for more than about 30 seconds here. We have the Golisopod now that can probably just shield one's farm all the way down. And if you take a look at Speedy's team, there's not a single Pokemon that wants to take 2 Aqua Jets, 2 X's, really. And it's going to be kind of hard for him to come back from this, I think. You might not even need to shield this Night Slash.
Yeah.
Rocha might realize that his Golisopod is pretty free into most of Speedy's team, but there is that Weezing that will come back in. So if you can get the farm down here, get 2 moves off anyway, this is going to be hard for Speedy to come back from.
I do love the catch, but not being able to force a shield here or get switched back, that is going to be rough for Speedy's Chief indeed. And
that Weezing does come back in here. It's in 2-shot range from an Aqua Jet, so you'll have to shield this if you want to knock this Pokemon out, and we do see the shield on the first move.
I think going into Lapras would have been better if he knew that the Mandibus was in the back, because saving the HP on the Galarian Weezing would be very good. But at this point, it's going to be tough. I like the swap from Rocha, knowing that if you land a Shadow Punch here, you can probably Air Slash it down with the Mandibus.
It is a bit of a bold play, though, to hard switch this Pokemon in when, I mean, you are a little bit ABA soft to that Weezing, but now you switch lock yourself into this matchup against the Lapras. I didn't quite see if the Sideways have the breakpoint here or not. A high defense Dusclops can only take 1 damage, but it's looking like this is 2 damage per turn. Dusclops is pretty low. It's in the range where 1 Sparkling will be enough. And Shadow Punch just kind of bounces right off of Lapras. It can survive this move. It can survive another one, too, if you want to overfarm here. Mandibuzz is in the back line without a lot of place to go, but we have to keep in mind Weezing doesn't actually have Fairy-type offensive coverage for its Chargers, only with Fairy Wind. So you can take a Sludge. You might be able to take 2, and all you need is a bit of charging pressure with the ArelHydae to win that matchup.
Especially the Lapras not having the Ice Beam here, that makes the Mandibus matchup even worse for Lapras, and also Mandibus shielding the Skull Bash correctly, which might even prevent Speedy's Chief from reaching another one. This looks pretty tough.
Yeah, I mean, you go for the Skull Bash, you boost your defense, but Mandibuzz was still going to be able to farm you down, so you're forced to swap out, clear your own defense boost. ArelHydae at this point has been reached. You're almost at the second one. I think you're going to outpace before 2 Sledges. But the thing is, even if you did have 2 Sledges, Galarian Weezing is not that offensive of a Pokemon. It's not even a Shadow here, so it's not going to do any damage to this Mandibuzz. You're already at the next ace. It's looking like Weezing will go down to this move. Rocha potentially getting the 2-0 sweep against Speedy's Chief.
It looks like there is not as many of a win con left. The Lapras going down to 2 Air Slashes, and this is Rocha taking down Speedy's Chief 2-0.
Yeah, not just 2-0, but a 3-ball flex there in that final game. It was a dominant win for Rocha. Honestly, a little bit of a tricky composition there for Speedy in that match there. Needed his Weezing for the Mandibuzz. It got chipped down way too much. And the safe swap of a Greninja, while he did catch a move, unfortunately, let that Golisopod just farm you all the way down. Didn't even need to throw a move against you. And that was, I think, where the game really started to unwind for him.
What really saved Rocha Babyface is that clearly he had the superior bug type, having the Golisopod that already PvP Steve had PvP Steve win his first round. That has to be impressive.
Yeah, exactly. Golisopod put in so much work in that matchup. We didn't see a lot of Shadow Sableye this tournament. Saw a couple people have this Pokemon. I was kind of hoping to see it a little bit. Makes sense, though, why you wouldn't bring it into a Greninja team. Rocha took advantage of the Pokemon he knew would work here, was able to get this victory against Speedy, and became our 3rd player to make it into the finals here of this tournament. So I think at this point, we're going to have our next battle with MEweedle casting in just a second.
And we will have Shadow Sableye returning.
Yeah, there's the Shadow Sableye, and there is MEweedle. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, and I'm excited to see this next set. We have kind of 2 interesting teams, interesting in different ways. Basically, we started today, already getting into the battle.
That's a good lead, but I think it might be a bit early on that.
Yeah, sorry.
Foreshadowing.
So we have sophtoph basically running the same team that we started today off with. I don't know if you remember, but we started today with Caleb, who's running the same team. as some kind of NAIC champion or something like that. Wouldn't know who that is. But sophtoph is actually opting for the Bug Buzz on the Araquanid, which is an interesting choice.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is actually pretty helpful for the opposing bulky water-type Pokemon. We see Lapras on NiteTimeClasher's side. One of the worst matchups. It's not necessarily bad for a Araquanid, but even like an Ice Beam Lapras can put in quite a bit of work into an Araquanid just because the charge moves from the double water moveset does almost nothing to them. So having Bug Buzz here might be a bit of a nice surprise pick. Is that a Shadow Whiscash that I see?
I think so. I do not know what it does, but clearly Eric is cooking as he always is. Maybe a good core breaker to the Diggersby Drapion core. I really don't know how to explain it, but maybe we'll find out.
Unlike Quagsire, it doesn't have that Stone Edge coverage for a Araquanid, which could make things pretty tricky. I know one thing that is pretty bad for Sophtoph's team here is going to be that Mandibuzz. It's pretty neutral into a lot of the team. You know, we might have a little bit of a spoiler here, knowing that there is going to potentially be some Dedenne action in this next game. Dedenne is the best counter to it, and honestly, Nighttime is kind of 4 times soft to Dedenne here. It's only going to be that Whiscash, which is kind of hard to bring when there's an Araquanid, and then that Cradilly that can also counteract it. So unless that Dedenne ends up seeing that Cradilly, or if NiteTimeClasher is crazy enough to actually bring the Shadow Whiscash here, I feel like potentially that Pokemon could run wild against this team as well.
Yeah, but we'll have to see. We have no idea yet what on earth they could be leading. So let's get into the surprising Game 1 leads.
Whoa, a Dedenne lead into a Mandibuzz. Great calls here by Sophtoph. This is exactly where you want to see it. Your backline is so weak to this Pokemon. And you see the instant save swap of a Cradilly. You know, unless there is going to be that Whiscash in the backline, that maybe Switch isn't the most important thing for you this game because Dedenne could pop off. But then again, if you see that Nighttime is trying to fight for Switch, that's going to be a big tell that there might be that ground-type Pokemon lurking in the back.
Yeah, maybe Nighttime recognizes that the Cradilly save swap can win Switch against basically anything, and therefore has tried to bring the most RPS core possible. So that may include exactly that Shadow Whiscash. So we'll have to see whether he goes for Switch. But no shielding the first one maybe slightly indicates that he isn't going for it, as the first one would have done the most damage, assuming he continues to throw Rock Tombs here.
Yeah, at this point, the most awkward part about this matchup for Cradilly is 2 charge attacks are just barely not enough here to 2-shot at Dusclops. You might try to cheese out a Grass Knot here to do just a bit more damage. It doesn't really matter if you debuff them or not at this point. We see a Rock Tomb once again coming through, which does end up landing, and a Sableye in the backline. All right, well, I mean, that's a nice snipe down by him here, but a Araquanid is going to be good enough to neutralize this, and Dedenne into the Mandibuzz is going to be catastrophic for him to try to deal with at this point if this Sableye and that Cradilly can't do enough against that little electric mouse.
Yeah, even if you know this is a foul play bait, I mean, the shield here is so safe, as you already mentioned, because it's that Dedenne into Mandibuzz matchup in the back. No reason to risk anything, you know, about this Sableye being able to reach a power gem against the Dedenne. But I don't really know what else to say about this matchup. It basically just is over already.
I guess the one tricky thing is they did save the Cradilly in the backline, which honestly, it is healthy enough at this point that it might be able to put in work against that Dedenne. I'm not sure exactly how much energy they have, but if Nighttime is outside of Thundershock downrange, there is actually a chance that I could see him having some play here. And I have to see that Mandibuzz come in before swapping, make sure they don't come in with Cradilly or anything crazy. In comes that Cradilly. Honestly, this is a tricky amount of HP to deal with right now.
Yeah, I completely missed the fact that Cradilly was still alive. Clearly, it's just kind of getting close to my bedtime. But yeah, that's actually a lot of health. You can't really Thundershock that down. So NiteTimeClasher might actually be able to shield up the next move and reach another Rock Tomb against this, and maybe might not be in such a bad spot.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you might be able to clear your attack drops as the Dedenne if you have to here, if you can somehow knock out this Cradilly. But the big issue being, you also have to clear your defense boosts, and at this point, too, a Rock Tomb, even at +2 defense, is going to chip you down quite a bit. In comes a move, Cradilly is going to be able to chunk down this Dedenne maybe into foul play range at this point. We're going to try to get a farm down here, and in comes that Mandy. Oh my goodness, at this point, it's still full HP. I've never seen a Dedenne that could not take care of a Mandibuzz, but at this point, there is nothing this little guy can do.
Yeah, that just doesn't even do half. And I think resetting this debuff is still just not going to save it. The Mandibuzz might just even get the full farm down here. The Bubble Beam is not reached, and I think this Foul Play or Dark Pulse will just take out the Dedenne from this range.
The only chance that Soph had here in this game at the end game would have been to maybe had a play rough loaded. I don't think a Parabolic would have even been enough to knock out the Mandibuzz at that HP range. Very well played by NiteTimeClasher, though. Man, I did not think that game was going to be too playable there when I saw that lead. And when I saw the final Pokemon with Shadow Sableye, I was like, okay, well, you have switched in the way you want it. But him saving just enough HP on that Cradily to still take care of the Dedenne shows why Dedenne, while it might get a good lead, always needs to keep switch at all costs.
Yeah, I completely missed that Cradily was still alive, and that was clearly kind of the deciding factor. I mean, it was only like 10% on that Cradily, but resisting the Thundershocks and being able to debuff and dish out super effective acid damage was really just so important to taking out that Dedenne that was otherwise dangerous into, you know, the ABA dark types, right? So
yeah, that was such a bad lead for Nighttime. Can we talk about that for a second? It was a Cradily in the back for the Dedenne, sure, but he had 2 dark types against the Pokemon you don't want to give any sort of an edge to here. The Sableye didn't even have to worry about the Dedenne, though, and while it wasn't going to be able to knock out really anything specifically that game, it did put in enough work that it was able to set up the end game for that Cradily. And Mandibuzz, while it did nothing, it was able to do enough of nothing to still close out that game.
yeah, NiteTimeClasher recognizing just how safe that Cradily safe swap is, and yeah, I mean, it's insane play, sniping that Dusclops with the Shadow Claws, keeping it alive, playing perfectly with the energy against that Dedenne and against the Dusclops, right? So I'm excited to see if he does more of that in the next game.
You're going to see Dedenne in the lead once again, and a familiar situation, a Mandibuzz once again in the lead. Who do we see come in here? This time we see a bit of a different scenario play out where a Rockrunnit is brought in rather than the Dusclops. I think this is the more consistent way to win the 2-shield matchup, but Cradily can get a shield advantage there if we see the Rockrunnit end up wanting to shield and win in the 1-shield matchup. Rock Tomb does a lot, but at this point you have Bug Buzz as well, which is super effective, so the zeros actually aren't that bad.
Yeah, the Bug Buzz here is really nice compared to the Water Pulse, as the Water Pulse just wouldn't KO and you'd have to go down a shield to keep switch, whereas the Bug Buzz will definitely take out the Cradily from that range. So NiteTimeClasher forced to shield to keep this alive. And if we see a similar situation to last time where it's the Sableye in the back, I'm not sure that Nighttime can make the same play of keeping this Cradily alive as much as he could in that game 1.
Well, it is the Sableye in the back, but now the Dedenne gets the chance to ramp up against this thing. With that said, once again, these quote-unquote bad matchups here are not that bad for it, saying Shadow Claw is going to add up quite a bit against this Dedenne's HP, and you do survive a Parabolic Charge. You see the no-shield by Nighttime, smart play by him, and while you do have Power Gem, almost certainly a Foul Play bait is going to be thrown just to threaten energy a little bit quicker against this Pokemon.
Yeah, I wonder just how much is that Cradily going to be able to do this time around, right? I have not been keeping track of the energy as much. Nice CMP there by sophtoph to boost up the defense one more time and take out this Sableye. Just how healthy is this Cradily and what can it do?
Oh, that energy lead might just be a bit too much to overcome at this point. I think you're going to get outpaced in the next charge move before you get to 2 Parabolic Charges, which might mean at this point, your Dedenne is going to just get wasted here. You have your Dusclops in the back line that's not going to fight the Mandibuzz at all. Maybe a catch is going to have to happen to win this game. Or we see the swap out, likely going to see the Mandibuzz come in, but Nighttime is so patient, realizing at this point the way that you win this game is by keeping energy on that Cradily. Maybe bank up a full move if you need to snipe down the Dedenne later on. And Ice Punch, while it is super effective, is not going to be able to do that much damage to a Mandibuzz.
Yeah, but the Dusclops has been given a bit of an energy lead, and NiteTimeClasher did stay in like an extra 2 to 3 seconds with that Cradily against the Dusclops. Maybe sophtoph is looking to use those tiny fractions of time to just gain some energy on that Dedenne to then CMP win over the Cradily in the end game.
Yeah, she can make this matchup very tricky if she wants to. Here we go for the second Ice Punch to stall the switch clock as long as possible. You can swap into Dedenne in just a second here, but Cradily did bank a full Rock Tomb of energy. So at this point, if you don't have a move, then you're not going to be able to snipe down this Pokemon. In comes that Rock Tomb here, which will knock out the Dedenne. But if you can Hex this down, maybe get some Ice Punches into that Mandibuzz, it still might not be over for sophtoph.
Yeah, how far off a Ice Punch is she? Will she come out with it? She actually comes out with the Ice Punch. I don't remember. How healthy is the Mandibuzz?
We still won't know. Ice Punches thrown. Is Mandy in range where one is enough to knock out here? In comes the Ice Punch. Down goes the Mandibuzz. sophtoph comes back in that endgame matchup. It's strange to say comes back when she got the hard counter lead once again. But I mean, Nighttime knew how to make that tricky, but sophtoph made it just a little bit trickier than he was able to.
Yeah, that was really well played. I love how Nighttime went for the same thing, the same play where he kept the Cradily alive. And it looked like it was going to work, but sophtoph danced around, forcing the Cradily to be farmed down by that Dusclops to come out with the Ice Punch against the Mandibuzz. That was great to watch.
At this point, the mind games are in full effect. Both trainers just ran back basically the same team both games. How do you adjust at this point? What do you want to swap into? Do you just run the same thing hoping your opponent adjusts? Do you not do that expecting that maybe if you're sophtoph and you both run it back, once again, you're in a good spot? But it's just so tricky here because no one's swapped up yet. Who's going to be the first to flinch? Who's going to be the first trainer to potentially change their strategy?
I have no idea myself, but all I can say is that we will find out in this next battle that is about to come up, as they both have changed their leads, and it's the Sableye into the Araquanid.
This is a very neutral matchup here. I would expect the longer this goes on, the better it gets for a Araquanid, because you can debuff, potentially farm them down the longer it goes. But in the zeros, before a debuff comes through, a Power Gem into your Bug-type Pokemon would do a hefty amount of damage here. We see the attempt at a bait and a proper bait by NiteTimeClasher, meaning that at this point, this Araquanid is down a little bit of energy. If they would have just let that move through, or if we would have shielded that Power Gem, potentially that could have been pretty good for us as well.
And Nighttime makes the right call on that Bug Buzz versus Bubble Beam as well. So he's just making all the right calls early on in this game, trying to get himself in the best position. As if he does have a Mandibuzz in the back, he would like to avoid it being on that Dedenne at all costs.
If this is the same team from game number 1 and 2 from Nighttime, just with a different dark type in the lead, then Switch is the only thing that matters this game. With that said, Nighttime didn't even fight for Switch here. There's a chance it might be that Whiscash in the back. And if that is the case, once a Rockman goes down, sophtoph's in trouble.
I would love to see a Whiscash here. That would be very fun to watch. However, I don't know if it actually is going to be there. But we'll have to find out. Is he going to swap out and clear his attack debuffs? He's just staying in against this Dusclops. As it is the Mandibuzz, and this is so bad for NiteTimeClasher now.
This is exactly what you didn't want to see if your name is NiteTimeClasher. The electric mouse switch locked into the flying and dark type Pokemon. Foul play bounces right off you. That's without a defense increase too. That is ridiculous how little that does. Dedenne can ramp up here. Even though there's a Cradily in the back line, I don't know how much play it's going to have at this point, because Dedenne is going to be even kind of tricky for that thing to take out at this point too.
Yeah, I mean, last time that we were in a similar situation, I said it was over and then NiteTimeClasher won. But I think this time it might be a bit better to say that this one, I think this one is over. But we'll have to see. NiteTimeClasher is the master chef. He can cook. We'll just see if he can somehow reverse this game from this point. But even I highly doubt it.
The no shield on that move there, I think, is the nail in the coffin. The only chance you really had was maybe to be able to dance around a little bit this game. But now, unfortunately, the Dusclops has a lot of energy on it, a lot of HP. This Cradily is forced to throw a move which doesn't even knock out a triple boosted Dedenne. There's a chance you might even get another move off if you want to, but there's no reason not to just swap at this point. Go for all the ice punches that you have loaded. Dusclops should be able to knock this thing out with just a couple of charge moves here. Depends on if NiteTimeClasher wants to shield to play this one out. Ice Punch number 1 comes through. Our opponent does see that they are going to want to shield. I don't think it's going to matter too much, though, for this Cradily. It's going to go down eventually.
Yeah, I mean, it's a full health Dusclops. Probably 2 moves aren't even enough, and there's a shield. So, sophtoph just firing off the shadow punches, recognizing that Nighttime still somehow wants to play this out and will likely be shielding this. Oh, no, actually, no shields. Maybe was just surrendering, but sophtoph decided to go for the shadow punch. This one will KO if it's no shielded.
Just toying with NiteTimeClasher at this point, going for the shadow punches. He ends up getting knocked out by that move, and Dusclops barely takes the win there in game number 3. Nighttime was a huge fan of being ABA weak to Dedenne. Proved that I guess it wasn't the worst thing in the world. Honestly, that was a very impressive game number 1. Very impressive game number 2 from both battlers as well. But that game number 3, just win, switch, win game. I'm a little bit surprised that Nighttime did not go harder for switch advantage with that backline. But either way, very well played, and congratulations to sophtoph for moving on in this tournament, being 3-0 undefeated and making it into the final stage.
Yeah, congrats to sophtoph. I mean, that was great to watch. She got a bit unlucky / outplayed in game 1, but that readjustment on the Dusclops farm down in game 2 was really good to see, and just forcing the alignment with the Araquanid in that game 3 was just a smart play, recognizing that NiteTimeClasher was most likely to run the same set of 3 Pokemon. A bit disappointed that we didn't see any Whiscash action, but NiteTimeClasher went with what he felt was best to counter something like the Araquanid, and it just didn't work out for him.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great set by both trainers here. sophtoph able to move on, and now I'd say let's go back to all of us here, regroup for the day, and talk about what we just saw.
Yeah, thanks for that, Axel. I mean, look, that brings us to the end of 14 matches, 28 casters from all around the world, and there were even more that we didn't actually get to see today. I know sophtoph's first round was actually up against Inadequence, where she was able to take the win there. And so, he did drop out of the tournament after that. He wasn't very happy with his Berserker team, to say the least. But look, some really, really cool battles today, and just really awesome all round. So massive congrats to the top 4 going through. But actually, I guess one thing we can do straight away is take a little bit of a look at the sort of final results of this sort of first 3 rounds of this sort of day 1 going into day number 2. And this doesn't have everyone's results, but we can see here the top 24 with sophtoph, Ice Chris, Rosha Babyface, and DrTrotter as the 4 progressing on into day number 2 undefeated, still in it to win it, 2 matches away from the grand prize. But of course, we've got a bunch of other really great performers here. I mean, ArceusAurelius, NiteTimeClasher, CalebPeng, Tomahawk also showing up here. Like, all of these guys, played really well. Maybe have only lost that 1 match, but does put you close, but not quite the cigar. But there's always room to, claw your way back up to the 2nd place title as well, with some more matches to go. But I mean, Axon, after we've seen 14 matches today, a lot of great casters, a lot of great battles. What were you sort of, most excited to see? Or what was your favorite match going through the day?
There were a lot of good matchups. I have to say, it might be a cop-out to say the last one we just saw there against NiteTimeClasher and sophtoph, but the ability that NiteTimeClasher had to overcome that game 1 in such a huge deficit in the lead was ridiculous to see. He almost did that in game number 2 as well, and sophtoph, being able to stay cool under the pressure, despite losing a good scenario, was still able to get the reverse sweep in that set. I don't think I've seen a battle that close in a long time.
Yeah, it was definitely a pretty cool one to watch. I mean, what about you, Rob? Was there a highlight of the tournament for you?
I'm impressed that Rocha, who already won the last Clash of the Casters last year, is on the road to be 3-0 again at this point, and about to maybe go 5-0 again.
Yeah, I mean, look, only 2 matches away, right? And I can, I guess, give a little bit of a spoiler here. Not of any results, but round number 4, we will see sophtoph versus Ice Chris and Rosha versus DrTrotter will be the matchups in the next round. So has to take down the last OCE player, and then we'll have to take on either their LATAM compatriot or the North American if they do want to go for that back-to-back championship. But what about you, Weedle? Was there a highlight of the day for you?
I would have also said the last match, but given that has already been mentioned, I will just have to say just how many times we have seen the NAIC champ team featured today has been incredible. I love Araquanids, maybe not as much in this meta, but it has been cool seeing the influence of just NAIC on all the teams used here. And yeah,
Yeah.
just how successfully it's doing. I mean, it's in the top 4, so that's definitely not bad.
Yeah, I mean, look, for its accent teams, one making it through to the top 4. I think we saw 3 versions of the Eomero Ashton Ash team running as well, with Rocha Babyface getting into the top 4 with it. And like in fairness, I believe that Rocha was running it at NAIC as well. Or either he was or he was about to until the last minute. I think he was running it. So certainly a team that he was quite familiar with, but getting through as well. I don't know if Ice Chris or DrTrotter ewing to their teams from someone at NAIC, or if they're a bit more homebrewed. I have a feeling that I definitely didn't see any double shadow steel types running around NAIC, to say the least. So I think that one might be a DrTrotter homebrew. But with that said, definitely some really cool matches. And by the way, some really cool casters, if I don't say so myself. I mean, look, really cool to have the world champions grace us with their presence here. Obviously, the casters, they told me they were all busy battling in a tournament, so there was nothing they could do to help. So really appreciate all 3 of you guys coming on, because it's really cool to, I guess, hear your insights, hear that, world champ difference on the mic, of course. So massive thank you to all 3 of you for coming on. But it's not the end of the road for the Clash of the Casters. Obviously, we are going to be back next week for, I guess, in 8 days time, something like that. It's a week plus a day, because we are going to be actually we can just go quickly have a look at the graphic, I suppose. We will be back. Oh wait, this doesn't even have the times on it. I think I've cropped it off the bottom. But it's going to be back next week at 2 p.m. ET, 6 p.m. UTC on Sunday. And it's going to be casted by It's Axon guy alongside the 2 guys flanking him, Dunebug97 and Marto Galde. I guess we're going to have double IC champs from this season alongside Dunebug. So some very cool matches to go with some, very cool casters as well. But I guess, before we ride off, any last words from you, Axon?
I'm excited to see who comes out on top here. I know sophtoph running the NAIC champ team is... I got to root for that. It's hard not to. Last NA standing as well in the tournament. And if I saw properly on the graphic with the results, she only lost a single game in her first 3 rounds. She 3-0'd rather against 2 of her opponents there too, which that's pretty impressive. So it's a good team. I can't wait to see who ends up coming out on top over the whole thing.
100%. What about you, Rob?
Yeah, while I'm disappointed that Europe is already out of the contention for the first place, I'm sure we're going to see some exciting battles on the last one. I'm excited to see Oceania still being up there.
Let's go!
So let's see if they can take it home for this time, or whether it's an A or it's going to be LATAM.
Yeah, big shout out to the Oceania versus Oceania round 3 pick, so we could guarantee someone was in the top 4. Bracket rigged for sure. But what's the phrase? Last not worst, best not for last, best for last. MEweedle, any sort of final comments before we wrap up here today?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to potentially seeing a LATAM finals next week, and we could potentially have the LATAM caster casting the LATAM finals, but we'll have to see if that even takes place in the first place.
Yeah.
Because, sophtoph and DrTrotter obviously strong opponents as well, and will be hard for Ice Chris and Rocha to definitely secure their spots in the final.
Yeah, I know Marto and Rocha, good teammates, good friends as well. And Marto running a very similar team at NAIC as well. So going to be really cool to see all of that action. But again, with that's going to be the end of week 1 of the Clash of the Casters. Again, massive thank you to everyone for casting. Massive thank you to the casters for competing. And thank you for watching, for supporting cool broadcasts like this. And I guess with that said, we'll just have to wait and see you in the next one. So stay tuned, everyone, but take care. Bye.
Goodbye.